Guys, listen, this is very, very important. Cloud9 told me when Cloud9 gets out of group stage that we have to have everyone in their places. So you guys are going to stand here. We're going to have, I think we've got a marching band off in the back. Can we just check that? The marching band? Yep, we've got that.
Cheerleaders?
Better than that. Go-go dancing girls. We're going to have like elephants out in the park lot. They don't want to bring them on yet. It could get crazy. All we have to do is just wait until they get out of the group stage, okay, guys?
Nice. All right.
I guess we're gonna have to save all of those fireworks for next year. God damn it.
Still Team Liquid, though.
What about Clutch?
9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Nines Summoning Insight presented by AT&T. Either episode 4 of this small run, or, listen, it's like comic books back in the day, you've got to know technology, or episode 84, depending on where you are within the...
Just add 8.
Depending on where you are within the Summoning Insight cinematic universe at this point in time, you know. We've rebooted, we've got a new character here and everything. So.
We're the dark, edgy cinematic universe of League of Legends.
Exactly.
We're the boys.
And also, we are literally, what's great there, by the way, is when Loco at the end added in that ad-lib on that little opener there where he said, what about Clutch? I actually only just remembered Clutch existed at that moment. Like, I was like, oh, they're already done. They're already done. Like. They are actually still technically in the tournament. I mean, they are out already, but you know. So, okay. As usual, we'll do the little rundown. So first of all, in case anyone forgets, I know we say this every time, but remember when the show initially started, we started at a different time. So just as it's 2 p.m. start time on the West Coast today, 5 p.m. start time, or 11 p.m. if you're in Central Europe, that is the same time it will be for every single show. And actually, it's easy to remember the shows from now on because they're all on a Tuesday. So just each week on a Tuesday instead of every couple of days, because obviously now we'll be going in the gap between the playoffs and each of the rounds, and we'll keep everyone up to date. As usual, we have a guest for this episode. Is he a washed up old school LCS player and therefore the only people around like all the other guests? Yes, indeed. He is. He is. It is actually Crumbz, your friend and mine, obviously from LCS, from Renegades.
From Overwatch League. From
the Overwatch League. He basically does anything Monty does. He's just sitting around going, can I get in on this in any way? And he goes, yeah, maybe on episode 4 or something. You know. So Crumbz will be here, Prophet Crumbz. Let's see if he actually got any of those right. As always, we will look at your memes. This time though, remember, they didn't have to just be around the template, but I think we might even have some more of those. I enjoyed those. There were some fun ones there.
There were some fun ones.
Some good ones. We're going to obviously talk about the last couple of days. We've got Group A, Group B. They're both resolved now. Going to look towards the last groups, because obviously the last 2 groups...
are the good ones.
I know this last one, actually, there was a lot of excitement in these groups, but the other 2 look amazing. They both have real potential to obviously determine who even wins the entire tournament. So a lot to look to there. And as always... we'll do that awkward segment where we go on the Cloud9 Discord, you go into the channels, the questions channel, you submit your questions, and then we get the good ones, we bring people on. I notice that feature gets better each time we do it.
Yeah, we've had some good questions.
People are on top of like actually answering when we unmute and stuff, now not just giggling and then just sitting there saying nothing. Which is funny on your end, not as good on our end though, you know. If you want to hear someone just giggle and say nothing, that's what we got Loco for.
I thought it was my job on this show, was just
you do that a bit.
Incessantly.
You do that a bit.
So I'm getting all the good Tom Cruise laughing memes now, which we'll have to get into. So what are your initial thoughts on the last? Logan's just sitting there saying nothing. Everybody look at Loco.
Join us. Come into the show.
Hi, guys.
Hi. How you doing?
What did you think about the last couple days of Groups Loco?
A little bit of surprises. I think Splyce definitely overperformed and Griffin really turning out for the tournament.
I can't handle it. In the context of the bet you've made, you have to say that though, don't you?
They did overperform. You don't think they overperformed?
Listen, in the context they beat FPX, yeah, I'll agree with you. I just mean that it sounds a bit, it rings a bit hollow when you predicted them not to even get out of the group. And you're like, well, I mean,
they overperformed.
They overperformed, didn't they? Like,
they did.
How am I supposed to do my job around here?
My prediction was fine. They overperformed.
Right, your prediction wasn't fine because it was wrong, but okay. Well, put that to one side. What you mean is there was reasons for it, which we will get into.
No. The problem with your prediction was that it was never fine because it was never based on actual reasoning in the first place. You can be wrong in a prediction as long as the prediction isn't like, oh, I'm doing this because I've literally never seen this team play.
So I knew the half for the prediction, right? How good Splyce was. I just didn't know about the other half and how disappointing Gam would be. But the half I bet on was correct.
Yeah, but Gam didn't even come third. It was like, didn't get that part right. Both parts were wrong. Anyway, whatever. We'll get to all that later. I'm sure there'll be some shenanigans involved with that. As we said, Group B, actually the one that at the beginning of the tournament everyone said was a joke. Actually, even after the first games, you thought, oh, well, maybe it's a joke, but now it's just J Team's good and Splyce is terrible. Actually ended up having more excitement than we expected. What about the group today, though? What do you have to say about that?
I think I was really impressed, just in general, by Griffin's clean performance against G2. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but obviously we said it's not a foregone conclusion that G2 is going to come out on top of this group. We just expect them to come out of the group in general. But that said, part of the criticism against G2 is sometimes they slump in these best of ones. But what's worrying to me is effectively they kind of played a best of 3 today, back-to-back games, and they lost 2-0 to Griffin.
And they were pretty stompy games.
Incredibly stompy. There was. We'll talk about it later. I was intrigued by G2's draft taking away many of the heroes that Griffin played in game 1, but then they got stomped by the heroes they got stomped by before. So we'll get champions. Sorry, I'm going to keep messing that up.
Sorry.
I had to unlearn that for Overwatch, and now I'm back into League of Legends in this offseason, and now it's all getting confused again. But needless to say, like, I was really underwhelmed by G2.
Yeah, my takeaway from this group, like very initial thoughts, was like, first of all, I actually suspected G2 could have problems like this. I didn't think they'd have a whole day where they blew a bunch of the games like this. Like, as Grabs himself even said on Twitter, basically they played 4 bad games today, and it was just that Griffin was the only one that could actually exploit them. Like, I kind of agree with them. I think they were bad even in the games they played against the other teams. So I would say...
Well, the first game they played was really clean against Griffin, to be
sure. I mean,
anyway.
he just means on that day, though.
Yeah.
So, like, the thing for me is, on the one hand, that means G2, as expected, has some weaknesses, but only in single games. Like, I would still expect him to be a favourite for the tournament. The more cool side on the other end of the equation is Griffin now is a legit tournament favourite. Like, this is a team, like, obviously, if you look at the way they played today, they could win this tournament. And that's without even the lineup they had in the summer. They didn't even have to resolve that problem.
See, I've just learned that they're like Loco Doco in esports form, in that the more drama that surrounds them, the more entertaining they are to watch, and the more power they gain.
Exactly. And
are they your favorite team now,
just
Loco?
when everyone's counted them out completely and say they're done in esports, that's when they inevitably crawl their way back into relevance for their next.
I haven't even talked that much this episode.
All right. There'll be time. There'll be a lot of time to talk about that Splyce team later. Don't you worry about that, Matt. And Cloud9.
For G2 struggling, initially when they struggled in like the first half of groups and they had kind of happy games, I kind of breezed past their mistakes. I was like, it's just G2 doing some G2 things versus the worst team. They had a really clean game versus Griffin. I'm not going to have to worry about them any further. And then they had that game versus Hong Kong attitude, and then today's games versus Griffin. Like, there are some serious problems within G2 in terms of how they're handling some of their early game and how cocky some of the players are playing.
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely a little bit rough around the edges. But they have, now they're done for the next more than a week, or a week, I should say. And so maybe they can adjust and deal with some of these issues while they've got a little bit of a break.
Yeah, they're going to be such a bomb for the team that finishes first and has
that's
match
the
up.
worst.
I think they'll be the strongest 2 seed.
Yeah, I actually
think
feel
you're right.
really sorry for any of the teams that come second and have to get them now, because that is an unfair draw. You did your best. You won your group. What present do you get? The absolute best team in the world. But then again, as we saw from the way the group goes, if you're that team, you have to take stock of that yourself. Like, hey, well, they've shown they can lose games. They can have games that they don't play up to par. I would even say, personally, for me, with G2, it's actually built into the compliment everyone always gives them. So everyone always says, oh, they're so clutch. Like, look at Perks in his career. He's been down 2-1, 50 times and come back. It's like, yeah, why is he down 2-1? That's the question, right? So the point is, like, G2 as a team, for how amazing they are, holy moly, the floor, as it were, if the ceiling's this high, the floor's pretty low as well. And they're a team where I feel like when they know like this, well, we're through anyway, if they're not like, if a game isn't important, if there isn't like elimination on the line, something important to win, they are a team who doesn't like keep that amazing focus of like the great teams of the past. That's one area I don't see them being like the great Korean teams of old and stuff. They don't kind of just always take care of business. Sometimes there's these games that are ridiculous, but they already knew they were through, so you could feel as though they switched it off,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we dive into this, because we're going to get into it more with Crumbz, let's take a look at some of our memes so that we can give away some gift cards by Puma, right?
The memes.
The memes, the memes.
Get the memes.
I feel like most are at my expense.
Just the good ones.
Just the good one. Well, you know what? If you want to pick memes that aren't at your expense, you can select them and send them into the producers, Loco. You have that power, actually.
This first one was pretty good, I can't.
Did you send any in?
No.
Because I did. So it's really on you. So this is by Robin, who is the general manager of the London Spitfire. This is just a sample. He obviously can't win it because he works for the organization of me just
That's
laughing.
actually better than the Tom Cruise. Like that,
Yeah, it is.
Yours more, if you know, it's way better, yeah.
It's definitely way better. And also, this is coincidentally, if the rumors are true that ESPN posted today, which is that the London Spitfire are trading profit to the Seoul Dynasty, I will actually use this and tweet it at him, because that's how I feel about that news.
Okay.
But, you know, enough about Overwatch League. Let's go on to the next one.
I'm sure the general manager didn't expect that one to turn back on him. In fact.
So fast.
Flash up, yeah. No.
I hate this dragon one. I knew someone would make one of me.
Here we go. There we go. There we go, right?
See?
Okay, yeah.
Uncontrollable laughter, confusing abstract analogy. I'm not crazy, I'm just local.
There we go.
I feel like this is pretty accurate of what this show has been so far.
Wow, no, that's not true at all. I brought the best kind of analytics, best kind of insight into the show.
You have.
Yeah, we'll be getting to the bets later. But no, anyway. No, the thing, what you have to realise about Loco is he plays the role of the character where, because we give him a little bit of stick, you know, he's like the younger one in the gang, you're all supposed to relate with him at home and really be on his side and support him. Like, the only problem is that part of it. Like, I'm not held responsible for that, so it's not my fault that they also just decide to wreck you as well. Like, the fans are supposed to be on your side.
Dude, I'm going to open up the curtains a bit, because Monteith getting back into League of Legends, and also Duncan is kind of tired and jet lagged from flying over from Britain.
Here we go.
The producers told me I have to go easy on them. I have to kind of be stupid, make sure I'm wrong sometimes, so there's things to balance off of. You know how charismatic, like how accurate and how articulate I am in person, but on the show I try to play it down a little bit. So
that's really nice of you to make us.
What's amazing is people don't know he is actually like a method actor. He's like Daniel Day-Lewis. He's been in character as this sort of like hapless Korean American character the whole show. Like I kept every now and then he was trying to come out. I was like, "Stay in it, bro. You're killing this role." It's like Heath Ledger or something in his prime. You know,
he's going for that Lifetime Academy Award. When he's 80, he's going to drop the act, and everybody's going to be completely amazed. So Christian, unfortunately, you're from Sydney, so being Australian, you can't actually win the competition. But you did make you did make a pretty good one. So we can go on to the actual contenders now. Okay, so these are people who are in North America who are 18 plus. Actually, this one it's not a meme. It's just sick art.
Isn't that just amazing?
Which we will, of course, put on the stream if you guys send us nice.
Well, they got our
from
height right also.
Did they? Are you actually the tallest?
I am.
Could be. I think it could be.
We're all about the same height. All right, let's go on to the next
The
one.
likeness is very good on that one, I have to say, though. There we go. They combined the Tom
They
Cruise
combined the
memes
Tom Cruise memes
meme
into one horrific image. Because the one of you's been around for a long time.
It's a classic, though, isn't it?
Yeah, the one of me is new. This is actually a different one than the one Robin made. Cloud9 itself, I think, made this one of me, and then they got combined. So thank you, Aaron. Go on to the next one.
If TSM ever does badly, that meme's going to get used. If anything badly ever happens to TSM.
Yeah, of course. Or Riot, just in general. This is a good one. What I like best about this, by the way, is that that's a really old picture of Loco from like 2012 or something. So
it was the emo phase.
Oh God, when I had long hair.
Why did you give Reapered your hair? Why did Reapered just steal Loco's hair from 2012?
It was Loco's Locks of Love.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
Fantastic donation from Loco.
I like the way he's actually gone to the limit, though, of giving the real context. Like the fact that he goes, look, on the right, it goes Splyce, third seed from a decent region. And then it goes Gigabyte Marines. It says literally a team he hasn't ever seen play from a trash region. That's actually pretty good.
That's harsh. That's harsh, Robert Byrne.
I like that one. That's pretty well
I like
done.
how his Twitter handle is Rito Rob Bob, which is the sort of cursed version of Riot that is probably actually a decent company. So let's go on to the next one.
Classic one. The tinfoil one. It's the way he's edited the TSM. It's bad, but I like that it's bad. It's so bad, it's good. Like, look at the way he's drawn like the Tipex part at the bottom or something like.
I feel like this is.
Look at his expression with the tin foil on his head. Look at his expression.
Thor's loving
He's
it.
just so reamed out in the. That is what he actually felt like today when he was watching these games in bed. I just know he was like, why do I have to do this show today? Why? No.
Yesterday, because how far GAM was ahead on Splyce and they still managed to lose. Oh my God.
Oh, I bet you would have loved it so much if they'd have won that game.
God was
Oh, I
messing
didn't even
with
thought
me.
of that. I didn't even thought of
There's
that.
been
He got wrecked.
There've been a lot of weird stuff happening, like TSM getting reverse whipped by Team Liquid, GAM being up like 5K gold, like free game, like on the plate, and they can't finish it off. Like, holy, we're in some bizarro dimension.
Exactly. Is that the last one? Is there another one?
I think that's the last one. That's a good one, though.
That wasn't bad.
I like your, the acting as a TSM fan, the tinfoil hat, because this is their attitude right now, right? Must be some sort of conspiracy that TSM didn't make Worlds, because they can't actually handle the truth that their team is bad. So which one do you guys like?
I mean, bottom left. I think bottom left.
You
is
pick
so
bottom
good.
left. Bottom left is pretty funny.
To be fair, at this point in time, TSM should probably organise one of those Area 51 raids just to try and get a good import player. See what I did there? Not bad. Not bad. And also just so Bjergsen could make a friend with ET.
To be fair, LCS hasn't had illegal aliens as players since
That's true.
2014. So they've overcome that.
And to be fair, Reginald took care of that situation for us as well. So yeah, thanks for that, Reggie. Cheers, mate. Thanks for putting things up there.
Just clear it
The
up.
old drop the dime on everyone. The old number.
All right. Which one do you guys actually like? As good as the art is, it
It's
was a
not me,
meme
is it?
competition.
I
So I'm
feel-
leaning towards one of the bottom
I
two.
think the bottom left one's the funniest one.
This one?
Yeah, I just
All
like
right.
the way he reframed it, like they're literally a team he hasn't said. That made it funnier to me. That was pretty good.
Okay, we'll go with that. Robert
That's pretty
Byrne.
fun.
Congrats on your Puma gift certificate. By the way, continue sending these to us, and you too can have a chance to win the Puma gift certificates if you're in NA and 18 or older. And also, you have to follow the Cloud9 Twitter. But send us more for Tuesday, which is going to be our next show before the quarterfinals. So we're going to take a look at Jukes and Puma, of course, the top laner last season for the Academy team, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Everybody try to put me in a box, but I'm getting kinda tired of breaking locks. Gonna live my life if that's okay. I'ma do it, yeah, I do it, there to do it my way.
Yes, I dare, Monty.
You do. It's true. You're very daring all the time. You
would
fit
say
in
too
great
daring.
with this new campaign from Cloud9 and Puma.
I'm wearing all my Puma stuff right now.
Same.
So, as a recap of Thursday, we did see FunPlus Phoenix finally kind of get it together to get the top spot in Group B after playing that tiebreaker. Was a bit of a nail-biter there for a little bit, though, losing some questionable games. Not sure if they're still going to be a favorite for the tournament moving forward, especially in such a weak group.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's really weird from them is they consistently pick not so great mid-jungle duos, and they're picking almost solely for the team fight to make sure they can have a good team fight set up. I think they're going to get blown out by teams like Griffin, who can put together incredibly tight and incredibly strong early games. So they were in a relatively weak group, and they kind of just made first place, so I'm really worried for them.
I'll even throw in as well, like, if you look at the game they lost against Splyce, which even caused the whole tiebreaker scenario, like, this is a really bad-looking game to lose if you want to be a potential champion in this tournament. You literally just got wrecked by a Cho'Gath top lane. Like, that's
Wrecked, too.
You don't even see.
Chachi crushed.
That was like a game you very rarely see on Cho'Gath in like the last, 7 years or something. That's ridiculous to have a game like that. He was bodying him.
Yeah, so some people were saying, like, now other people are going to pick Cho'Gath into GP.
I don't think so.
So it might be a new meta pick, but also I'm leaning towards the direction where with Vegetachi just playing
I
incredibly
think
well.
he just liked the champion and had comfort on it. Yeah.
He also was just, his mechanics were on point. The number of ruptures he was
he's
hitting.
so good in those team fights, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's really hard to hit those ruptures with the delay on the knockup. So, especially when you have so many high mobility champions that are able to be used in the game right now.
It was so crucial in mid lane where he was able to cancel Galio's heroic charge, and then that's where Doinb got caught, and that's where they were able to kill him, and then that's where they really got the snowball going. So yeah, he played a crucial role in Splyce being able to snowball on FPX.
By the way, shout out to Froggen, because he did actually mention on that last episode 2 days ago that Galio might be played, and I believe he even said Doinb was
Yes.
practicing.
Oh, yeah, he
the
definitely
that
said
was
that.
actually used in the exact match that he
Definitely
referred
said
to,
that.
So fair play.
Yep, definitely paying attention to the solo queue. That's what he was talking about. We also have Splyce, of course, in Group B. So they did finish second, which I guess I should have stuck to because that was my original prediction, but I switched over to J Team during the last episode. But they looked a lot better. Not perfect, obviously, far from it. But they are advancing the quarterfinals, most likely to meet a swift demise from whichever first seed they face. But it was something at least.
Yeah, I mean, it is an accomplishment. Going to Worlds for the first time ever, and also being able to make it out of the group, or at least this iteration of Splyce. I think Splyce has been there before as an organization, but this iteration, like this exact roster, never has. So, yeah. I mean, we can talk about them being in a weak group. We can talk about like their first seed kind of failing and not really giving them a challenge, but still, they actually made it through, and that is an accomplishment in its own.
Yeah, the real problem here is just that you can't escape the context of the group coming in. So even though FPX and Splyce came exactly where on paper they're supposed to, 1 and 2, it actually hurt both of them that the group was so competitive overall. Like for FPX to lose that game to J Team, for Splyce to lose to so many of the squads, like that is kind of unacceptable. Even if at the end you ended like this, it makes you feel as though, as you said, like any team these guys play, you feel like they're the underdog now. Like they haven't shown you enough in this group stage. I will say one thing for Splyce though, and this is the one area where actually, if I'd have known this, you could have expected they'd be at least decent in the group stages. This is a way better meta for them than what we thought coming in. Like they're another team that was stuck in that like mid-game trough, and then they would just have to try and win in the late game or win with team fight or whatever. So actually, at least in this meta, you see the game get to that phase quite a lot. You don't have to just get wrecked in the lanes with ganks 24/7. Like even so, I can't even theorycraft which team that means they could beat in the playoffs of who's remaining, because it's going to be good squads. Let's face it, there's no fluke team's going to get through. But at least the meta holds, I think, some more promise for Splyce. What do you think?
I think the meta is going to get faster as people figure out what's important. And we saw Kaos get blown out in the Group A, and maybe people don't play Kaos as much. And that's also going to really push the meta in terms of it being faster. So people were just a little nervous when the group started, when the whole tournament started. Now everyone's in their group, so we're going to see it speed up. But Splyce had adapted to that, where their mid-game used to be really weak, and they used to wait for core items on Kabe, core items on Humanoid. They started playing much faster to match that, where if they have a lead, they're not going to waste the kind of tempo and kind of the priority they bought by resetting for those items or just waiting and keeping the game stalled out. They're actually pulling through on objective, pulling through on team fights. And also, I hate it when casters say stuff like, oh, you just need one good day and you can make it through. Vizitachi actually had an insane performance throughout the games he played, and it really was on just that one good day, one person having like an amazing performance, really pushing them through. I
mean, Humanoid, I thought, played pretty well also throughout Splyce's game. I mean, we can't really discount the fact that they came in and won 3 of their 4 games. The only thing they lost was the tiebreaker for first place, which is obviously important because hitting a #1 seed is a big difference in your ability to make semifinals, especially in a lot of these groups. But even if they were first seed, I don't think we'd say, oh, this is a team that's likely to beat any of the other second seeds. Really.
That would be the weakest first seed ever.
Yeah,
I can't think of a weaker first seed in the history of
No, it would be the worst, I'm pretty sure.
All right. Well, we did have at least a pretty funny tweet coming in favor of Splyce from some of the European fans, which we'll go to real quick before we come back as part of the Lord Bet.
It's Dracos.
Of course, Dracos, one of the casters.
It's basically the new version of the old Homer Simpson one, isn't it? You know, which the classic version used to be, it would be a CLG fan who would go out in the Cloud9 fan. Obviously, like, those were the teams that you'd do. You know, let's face it, you'd never be a CLG fan and go back as a TSM fan. Like, it had to make sense. I agree, though. Like, there's definitely a bit of that vibe, because one of the things is, coming into this tournament, right, most of this year, everyone in Europe was really heavily riding that narrative of like, well, if G2's the best and Fnatic are close, then our region's the best.
Oh my God.
Whereas like, I never personally bought that angle, because I always told people, like, if you're watching LPL, mate, they can go like 8 teams deep, like they're good over there. So I always thought that was overrated. But like, jokes aside, I don't really know that many European teams actually want Splyce to win or consider Splyce a representative team. Because even think about the way they play. The way they play is just not like sexy League of Legends, is it? G2, obviously an amazing squad to watch. Even Fnatic, like the way they play, they could get edges on a lot of teams in the early game. Splyce is kind of a bit whack. I think most people like Splyce.
Gameplay level aside, their branding is pretty mediocre, and there aren't real big fans of Splyce. They've actually played pretty decently. They're a team that's been to Worlds twice, but I feel like they don't really have a large fan base.
Well, their branding is not mediocre. It's just bad. It's a snake, but they're called Splyce with a Y. I don't even understand the connection
Because
between
they're
these
like
two things.
they're like that libertarian flag that you guys have in America, right? They're just like, hey, bro, don't tread on me. Like, just leave me alone, bro. It's like,
But what does the splice have to do with it?
know.
What are you splicing? Is it like DNA?
to be fair, they are as good as a League of Legends team as that movie Splyce was a good movie.
I haven't seen the movie.
It's terrible.
I didn't even
It's
know
It's really bad. It's really bad.
All right. So we do have to revisit.
But they were
Hop
actually
in.
messing with a humanoid creature in that as well. But anyway,
Were
keep
they?
going. Yeah, it's pretty good. Keep going.
Okay. Well, had I known, I could have appreciated that joke. But we are going to have to take a little visit to our Summoning Insight time machine now to take a look at last week on a Lord bet that we made on this show, because that needs to be resolved post-haste. So,
The question is just, is it FPX or Splyce first? We're not even going to rank J-Team and GAM, because who cares?
all right.
Who cares
So,
who comes last in that group?
I have so little confidence in Splyce. I actually think GAM could be.
no, all right. So let's show the pick'ems first.
How many games of GAM have you watched play?
None. I think Splyce is that bad though. I've seen
That
it
doesn't
play.
even make sense.
No,
No, we have to make a Lord bet over this.
Yeah.
Wait for this one. No,
Yeah.
this is no.
Listen, you picked them. If you lose, we'll make it very, very minor. You just have to tweet like, I apologise to Splyce. I will never again pick a team I've never watched to beat you. I think that's pretty reasonable. I think you should do that already, quite frankly, whether you win or lose. But, you know,
Well. Cows have come home.
Yes, the chickens have come home to roost for you, Locodoco. Now, you haven't made this tweet yet, have you? Apologizing publicly to Splyce?
Following up
thought
on
no.
lost bets is actually something he's
Wait,
not so
no.
good with, you know?
I wanted to save doing the apology for the show, and
Got
I
it.
will make the tweet
Got it.
right after I do the apology.
Okay. Well, luckily for you, I brought you an outfit to wear for the rest of the show today,
Let's see
too.
let's see what this is.
I know this isn't part of the bet, but I think you'll be a good sport about it. I think you'll be a good sport. So, we're going to get that underway. We're going to bring Crumbz on now, and I'll have Loco change during this little bit of a break right now, and we'll be back with him as part of his penance, and Crumbz to laugh at him coming up.
Oh my god, I hope it's not an esports dress.
Imagine that this ping pong table is League of Legends, and Niski is, well, he's still Niski. Every time a new patch is released, the game changes. That's why Cloud9 have partnered with Microsoft. Using their technology, they can understand changes faster, so that no matter what the next patch brings, they're ready to own it. Ping pong ball did not actually penetrate table, physically impossible, but we left it in because it looked awesome.
After the recap, they just started dumping a bunch of new games on
all
top of
at
us.
once.
I'm like, wait, slow down, there's too much.
I was there live at the audience. Everyone's just like, "Oh my god, like we can't handle this."
It was like Craigasm for everyone.
Yeah, it's actually nuts. Hey guys, it's Golden Glue and West Rice. We're here. We're about to watch the Riot Please 10th year anniversary. That was really recent. I was there live watching the announcement, and they've got a lot of really cool stuff coming out. So we're gonna watch a video, talk about what we think about all the new stuff they're coming out with, and it should be a good time.
Let's do it. Jesus.
Oh, the new Karma skin. Oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. Like that whole like the league fund they're doing. They created their own like charity to like that they can 100% of that Karma skin money is going to that charity. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Earth's coming back. Whatever. I really don't care about Earth. This is whack.
This changes the whole game.
All these like elemental dragons. I'm concerned of what it's gonna be like because imagine you're playing Rengar and then they just burn all the bushes.
Yeah.
Or imagine you're playing against a Rengar and then it's like Ocean Dragon and now there's just like bushes everywhere and you just like absolutely want to.
To be fair, like in the past, whenever Riot like announces something or change, like the community always like are like super against it. But like I'm down to like see how it's like, you know, like I don't know how it's like until I play it. Maybe it's just super fun that way. That's like kind of how I see with like whenever Riot releases stuff. Like I don't know until I play it. But like watching it is kind of like, why are you doing this? But you know, change is good.
Yeah, change is good. I would say this is definitely the most drastic changes they've ever made.
One of yeah.
Like
probably that drastic guy.
I think so, because like they're changing the map a lot. There's gonna be like two things on both top and bot lane are both gonna have like little C-shaped coves there's going to be more bushes. Like they added a bush near blue buff, and then the map changes because of dragons. Like last season, all I can really think about. I mean, the big changes were like the rune pages, turret plating.
Yeah.
Turret plating actually doesn't really change the game that much. It does, but the fundamentals are the same. This is going to change the way you play the game.
Actually, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Elder Dragon also is nuts now too. I think they want games to end earlier, which is like I'm kind of fine with. 35 minutes is pretty long. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm excited. A bunch of new stuff to do. A bunch of new stuff to watch and enjoy. So good job, Riot Games. We're very happy.
Pretty excited for the future. Thanks, Riot Games.
Welcome back to Cloud Connections, presented by AT&T. We are waiting for Locodoco to finish his beautiful transformation from a caterpillar into a Splyce butterfly. But in the meantime, we have Alberto, of course, Crumbz here from the LCS analyst desk. You were also rejected for Worlds, so we're all here together.
But actually, I got a little bit farther away from the rejection table as I now recorded my first VOD of watching Worlds. Right, so that's kind of like taking the sloppy seconds?
Just gradually getting pushed out.
Right.
You're the little pig at the end of the trough where there's most of it's gone and you're like, oh,
I'm eating.
You're the last person in the human caterpillar. I think that's how it works.
That's right, yeah.
Delightful.
Well.
Centipede. Yeah.
Oh, human centipede. I messed up the joke. Thank you. Damn it.
We got it.
Thanks for saving
it's Loco, that's a human caterpillar.
That's right. I'm missing it.
Although in his case, maybe his is more of a snake shedding its skin.
That's true.
TSM, all the teams he's been in, people he screwed over, double it. Everyone. I'll just say names until we all understand what I'm talking about.
All right, well, we're still waiting for Loco.
Now, in hushed tones.
Oh, he is. He's here. He's here.
She comes. It's Miss Summoning in.
What up, Crumbz?
No. Do your runway rock.
What?
Do your rock.
Oh my God. Turn it around. Show us what's... Let's see. What's in the pants? What's in the top of the pants?
Yes, that's right.
Let's see it. Let me see it.
Ooh. To the camera. Walk up and do a gesture to this camera. This one.
Be a snake.
What?
You're a fearsome cobra, Locodoco. Yeah. Yes.
Oh my God. They don't pay me enough for this.
Thank you. Thank you for being a good sport, as usual. I brought all my Splyce gear. It finally came in useful for something. It's not all the tags on.
Splyce gear. Yeah.
See, they're a team that made top 8 at Worlds. When's the last
Have some respect.
No, you just can't.
I thought they made top 4.
Yeah, they did. That was in the past.
Why do I own it? Because I have probably hundreds of esports jerseys and boxes in my garage for moments like this. See, teams, this is why you send me your esports swag, because you never know when you're going to get some great publicity out of it like this.
I thought about it, should I keep it or not, and I've decided to donate most of it all the time, but now I want to hoard it all and do one giant donation into some sort of impoverished area where you could just send out your entire merch line, and now suddenly you've got fans waiting to be on your team by the time that your country develops, and suddenly...
The only problem is, here's the problem, right? What happens when those kids from Somalia go to their first trip to Europe and everyone laughs at them for wearing Renegades jerseys like 4 years ago? They're going to think they're wearing some really cool stuff like, I'm in the LCS. That team didn't go that well, actually. It kind of ended badly.
Hey, look, at least our logo was cool enough for the XFL to steal it, so that's something at least, right?
Yes.
We also didn't go with the jersey route, because those are stupid, but... Seriously, why do esports teams need to wear jerseys? Are you sweating up there? You're not.
Right, we got kimonos now.
That's right.
It's the future. You can do whatever you want. Wear whatever you want.
He has got some Obi-Wan sort of thing going on here, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Crumbz and I have entered the robe meta in Los Angeles. Because the secret is if you want to wear jackets, it's actually impossible because it's too warm. So you just wear robes instead. This is what I figured out.
Yep.
Crumbz and I arrived at this conclusion independently.
Here's another benefit of it. When you are having a meeting with people that are non-robers, you show up, they might be wearing a suit. You have a robe, immediately you have all the power in that room.
What?
They're thinking, we're just a bunch of suits. This son of a gun's got a robe. What is this guy talking? This guy has a robe on. He must know what he's talking about, and it works. Trust, I get in all my Lyft drivers with a robe. They're like, oh, are you some CEO? Without the robe? Oh, it's just another kid serving bars.
Indeed.
Where's the logic in this?
It doesn't.
Where's the logic?
It's stupid, isn't it? It's really confused by that. It's just a joke. Just a throwaway joke. Let it go.
You're right. It is stupid, Loco, but it's effective. It's stupid and effective. All right. So we have to talk. Thorne and I were watching movies again, Kurt Russell movies, because I guess that's our jam this month. And we were watching Big Trouble in Little China last night, which is a classic 80s movie, which I think we can actually call Group B, considering how FunPlus Phoenix was doing in that group, where they shouldn't have had any trouble at all, but instead they got some big trouble. And let's talk about where they ended up, because it was a surprise that they even ended up in this tiebreaker. Now, they were dominant after their first loss of the day, so it seemed like they finally got their ass kicked, and that got them into gear. Because the rest of the matches they played were pretty convincing, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the preparation for BO1s is just terrible for most of these teams because you have to think about the quarterfinals. You're going to go into a BO5, and none of those skills of prep really transfer to the group stage where it's segmented so differently with teams playing on random days, and now you're playing 3 teams in one day. You can't really prepare. It's the same thing as the Super Weeks that you had way back in the LCS.
Were the worst.
And every prep for Super Week is the same thing. You don't even bother looking at who you're playing against. You can only focus on playing your game.
Or you look at one team, and I think that was the crazy thing when I was coaching CLG, contrary to what Reginald says, during those Super Weeks, was because when you went into them, you could prep for the best team you were playing, but that also allowed you to be sniped by bad teams because you just didn't have time to prepare for them properly. Meanwhile, if you were the hardest opponent they had, they were working on some one-off strat for you. What's mind-boggling to me, now the reason why they have to have all these matches in one day is because of the tiebreakers and because they don't want teams to have time to think about
you don't want to manipulate
throwing to manipulate the bracket.
For example, G2 today, if they'd have known they were going to get a team that was not as good as the #1 seed, they would have lost all the games on purpose in that scenario.
Right.
You avoid that completely.
Yeah. I do understand why they're doing it, but it does introduce this thing where literally no team in the world in any league practices for this scenario. And it makes it very difficult. Whereas, do you have to do it in this format? Yes, and that's exactly what Riot will say. But we could also just do a double elimination group of 4, like a GSL group where you just do best of 5s the entire time, and you would never have that problem, really. So.
My problem with this format is this. I get why it works for fans because I actually, when it's the group stage, prefer these days where you get closure in the day and you feel the storyline unfold during the same day. But I do feel as though it makes it way more of a crapshoot. Number of times on this portion of the tournament, you get one team does a miraculous comeback or one team falls back. It's way bigger because it's just you form on one day. Whereas I just for the sake of the tournament, I actually prefer the first part where you play each game separately, you prep for it all, you make your adjustments between the games. Whereas it's so hard to do that in this phase. I feel like this is a real
If the bottom teams were better, would you still have gripes with the format if we didn't have games like GAM versus JT?
Yes, because the problem is that no one practices for this scenario. When you think about formats, you have to try and at least test. There has to be some sort of consistency, right, to the format because you're basically testing teams on something that they don't know how to do. No one in the world knows how to do this all in one day ever since we lost Super Week,
This is like if you had the whole NFL season and then in the first round of the playoffs, you just play 2 games on one day. In theory, if you're the best team, you probably still should win, but I wouldn't blame you if you found it really hard in that second game or people were like, there's another thing you have to factor in, the fatigue element. If you played the 4 games that they did in this tiebreaker scenario now, that
4 hours.
There's waiting, and not every team I think plays the same schedule. In that I saw some teams would play back to back, others have 3 games of break, and the breaks might actually be worse because you just sit there, and it's not like you can go back to your gaming house. You're there for 3-4 hours.
Yeah. If you're FPX, you might think my games are done, but I have to wait and see if Splyce was. And if they do, now I have to play again. I thought I was done for the day.
Dude, the breaks are so miserable. You get that adrenaline rush when you play, and then the players drink caffeine. You tell them not to chug it. You tell them not to chug that energy drink. They do it anyway. And then afterwards, during the break, everyone's just tired, everyone's cranky, and then you have to play, and then you have to get into the mood again. I feel like it is such a disadvantage to play and then wait and then play again.
So that sounds very specific about what you just said. What did you do in that situation where your players took too much caffeine before? So what did you give them after?
What did I give them after? I mean, most of them just took energy drinks again going into it, and it didn't They weren't going to listen.
It's hard to get through the pro players.
There's
so.
nothing I could have
I mean, you did have to create an entire show called Listen Loco just to get people to listen to you, and that took years. So.
Except the irony is, in the end, it's just him listening. It was slightly that's why it's named that. It actually ended up being a title because it ended up being a cursed monkey paw scenario. It's like, I'd like a show where it's like everyone has to listen to Loco. It's like, listen, Loco it is. All you do is listen. So you got to phrase those like demonic pacts very, very precisely. You know.
I definitely made a deal with a demon doing that show.
Exactly. That was the old Joker Summon Insight.
Going back to the format a bit, it tests such a weird skill where you have to prep equally hard for 3 opponents, and each game is so important. And you never really ever have to do that during regular season. So yeah, it's a really awkward place for teams to be put in, but what can they do?
And again, going back to it, we already have a format that would absolutely work with 4 groups of 4 teams, which is the GSL format where you pair 1st and 4th seed up, 2nd and 3rd seed up, and you just run a 4-team double elimination bracket. You play 5 games, that's it. You're done.
Here's the counter to
But then you're losing best of ones for everywhere else.
That's true.
I mean, you could play it best of 1 if you wanted to. I personally would not recommend that. I think they suck too. I think you should play best of 3s for that, and then play best of 5s in quarters and have a double elimination in quarters onward.
Best of 1 is so weird.
The problem with the series is you can't broadcast it as consistently as you can with the best of 1s. I think, isn't that what the problem was in the first place, where you just are not consistent if you have, say, a day of 3 best of 3s that could run 9 hours?
Yes.
Or
4.5 hours. Yeah.
Sure. You are absolutely right on that front. And I think that for the regular season, that there's an argument that can be made about that. But let's be real. Everybody's going to watch Worlds anyway, right? This is the big tournament. Are you super concerned? Yeah, like, I don't really want to watch a best of 3 between J-Team and GAM. I don't. But, you know, the nice thing about the double elimination brackets is you only see that once and they're gone forever, right? Yeah. So here's the misnomer. I already have to watch 2 games of J-Team and GAM. So I might have to watch a 3rd.
That's
maybe
right. Okay, I see.
So you're basically only giving people you're mostly giving people more of the good shit, right? And taking away all but maybe 1 game of the games you don't want to see. There's actually not really compelling arguments against it.
Inherently, I think best of 1s are problematic because I don't think that's what League of Legends is really about. League of Legends is about adapting. It's about strategy. It's about seeing what your opponent does and what kind of answer you can come up with and being creative with your picks, where that's what I feel like is true League of Legends, like these best of 5, like no one talks about, do you remember that legendary best of 1 that this team played versus that team in 2014? What, Renegade Dignitas?
Yeah, of course.
For all the wrong
legendary
reasons.
best of 1s, man.
I just think best of 1 is really garbage, and for it to be such a significant piece of World Championships and hold so much meaning towards so many teams is such a weird world to live in.
Okay, we have the groups played so far, though. I'm happy with the result so far. I think it makes sense. The best teams have gotten out of both groups, and I don't think anybody can disagree with that so far.
Yes.
They have, but the way we got to it is weird.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that the best of 1 format, even though it is a part of League that isn't the best that League has to offer, it's not like it's harming the best teams to get to that point.
It definitely could.
It has, but it's not doing it right now.
Just because it hasn't done it right now doesn't mean it's okay.
But when did it happen before? Which team did you feel like was really destroyed by the best of 1 that would have made it out and done really well?
Oh my God, dare I say it?
Alliance?
TSM 27.
Get out of here.
Wait, that TSM roster? Losing that game to Flash Wolf?
Wait a minute. Like, to be fair, he's actually right there. Like, you could take any of the 2 years, the 2016, 2017, where TSM didn't get out of the group, so they had the Svenskar and double FPX. You're telling me in best of 3s they could still lose those groups? I think that's way hard.
I don't remember who was in that group.
The first time was when they had the really sick group with Splyce, the Danish team, though, if you remember, and then Samsung, who came second, and then RNG was pretty good. And then the year after was the one that was actually even more easy. It was the one where it was like Misfits,
Flash
Wolves, and then WE, I think. I think it was World Elite.
Yeah, they definitely should have gotten that.
Like, I think both times, if that's best of 3, they get out. That's best of 3.
No, man, it's still TSM. It's still a TSM that was still doing okay regionally there, but I feel like the beginning of the end was already happening for them in those years because the year after was the Sven Mithy experiment. So they're already thinking about the pieces for next year.
No, they did that. No way before World started, TSM as a team thought we're going to replace Double Lift at the end.
I don't know, man. I was on the ground talking to players and people. It felt like it was going.
No way. No way. No.
What do you mean?
What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
I wasn't there. I was like at the event.
I was there too. Wait, no.
Oh, like challenge head to head. You challenge her.
The China
I
one.
was there
No,
as
not the
well.
China one. That one, TSM wasn't even at that World. Not that China one. The one in America. That's the year what they broke up. China one, you're thinking, I think, is
The year
2018.
China was before they made the Sven Mithy.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
No,
because 2017.
Wait, no, because we can easily just
Enough of this.
Make some of the insight interesting again.
All right, let's talk. We're done talking about
Skip that part.
TSM.
We don't
Anyway,
do that.
it doesn't matter. The format could be better.
Yes.
We all agree on that.
And TSM
also,
could be better, allegedly.
and TSM could also be
Who are
better.
you are.
I'm going to look this up. I know I'm right.
And also, Crumbz is correct. We still have had the best teams coming through this group,
Yes.
so we can't complain too much. That said, let's bring it back to actual Thursday. Group B.
Oh.
Group B, yesterday, Splyce's big comeback. Obviously, they went 3-0 to start off the day. That was much more than anybody expected from them. What adjustments do you guys think they made coming into this set of matches?
I think the priority in the carries for Kobe is a huge deal. I think a lot of these teams need to rethink of what they do in the bottom lane, particularly Kai'Sa, Xayah. Those two champions, you got to must pick them pretty much. They're just too good.
So you haven't been thrilled with some of the drafts you've been seeing around?
No, I
bottom
mean, I
lane
think it's
mages?
cool, but...
What about Garen?
Yeah, I like them, but if Xayah and Kai'Sa are out, because those two, they survive... I think Garen Yumi's kind of busted, but those two as marksmen, every marksman has in this tournament has played way more of carries than mages. They're going to be better at them. So these two are the hardest to kill marksmen right now. Forces a lot of players to make mistakes diving onto them. It's just free... I want to say LP, but it's free climbs in the world tournament when you pick these champions.
Free low. So, but that said, we haven't seen a lot of bans toward these
Which is
these champions.
the strangest thing. Before Worlds, every region was first picking Xayah Kai'Sa. Every region was banning Xayah Kai'Sa. Suddenly, Worlds happens, no changes to these champions, and they're still not first picked?
Wait.
That sounds like in scrims something happened, doesn't it?
No. New picks got introduced that are higher priority than Xayah.
Exactly, but they should not be. I think Xayah and Rakan... Well,
they're like, oh my god, I don't want to play versus this. I'm going to ban Yuumi. Kale's popping up, Syndra bot lane popping up for Western teams, and Eastern teams never have played versus Syndra. I don't really know what to do versus Syndra. Let's ban it. We haven't really practiced versus Kale. Let's ban it. It's not that Kale and Syndra are more OP than Xayah Kai'Sa, but a lot of times, I'm pretty sure teams don't have practice versus the champion, and they rather ban it than play against it.
Who besides Perks is a good bot lane Syndra from the Western teams?
I have no idea, but the Eastern teams are still banning Syndra.
So
I mean, I imagine it comes...
It's scrims.
It comes into play in scrims.
I guarantee the scrims is the same stuff. Kiana looks like a Rengar, a better Rengar in scrims that's easier to execute. In a scrim, it pops off, and then suddenly it might do that or just run it down every time. So I think there's been an overvaluation of scrims because of the boot camps that happen separately.
Well, odds are teams are going to take more risks in the draft once we get to the best of 5 stage. Like, we've been waiting for Pantheon not to be banned, and that hasn't happened yet. But I think some team is eventually going to take a risk in a best of 5, see if they can let it slip through and have an answer.
I don't think there's an answer for Pantheon right now, though.
Well, somebody's going to delusionally think that, though.
You can flex into 5 roles right now. Like, it's like, okay, support Pantheon, split pushing now, guys. What do we do? It's like he one-shots you.
That is like the really confusing thing versus Pantheon. When you open it and you're trying to prep a counter, your counter has to also match it in any kind of lane that he can be played in. But if you can open it and beat it in a best of 5, it's so meaningful because it affects the whole series. In a best of 1, if you win against it, it's just to win. It doesn't give you a draft edge going forward, but in a best of 5, it gives you a massive edge. The fact that you can beat an OP champion, and now the enemy team has to ban it on both sides.
One of the factors I actually think also contributes to Splyce's turnaround from how bad that first week was and how bad they looked in the first week is you have to remember most of these players don't have experience at Worlds. Like Kobe is basically the only player as far as I know who's even been. Like the rest of them, remember, someone like Humanoid's a pure rookie anyway. obviously Vizicachi, famously when he qualified, that was the whole narrative, was that he was one of the best players to never have qualified for Worlds from Europe. Yeah, Cersei was only just came up the last couple of years. Norscarian was basically nobody until about this year. He was just like a lower level player. So it's not a surprise if players like Humanoid have a bad first week in that scenario. Like, there was a lot of pressure on him to be a carry in this team. Kobe wasn't in position to even carry those games. He was never a lane dominant player anyway. So I don't think it's that crazy that they were that bad the first week. It's just the opponents that were beating them is the bad part. Yeah. If that had have been some bigger names and they'd just struggled, you can look past that, because that's the real problem is even the wins in this particular day, 2 days ago, whatever, yesterday, it doesn't really, like, in your brain make up for how bad the first week looked. Like, I have a hard time still getting any hype that Splyce can do something for me in this tournament. I'm finding it hard to think of any team that can beat.
Duncan, it's not just week one. They struggled in play-ins also. That's the other thing.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, they lost to...
They barely even made Worlds. They went to Game 5 against Unicorns of Love.
Good at best of 5 team, by the way, guys, unfortunately. So.
To be fair, I think Unicorns of Love probably would have won any of the other best of 5s in that play-in tournament.
But even before that...
Well, maybe not Dom 1. Maybe not Dom 1, but yeah.
Even before that, they dropped the game to Detonation Focus Me. So there's just been problems all over. And then before that, they got smashed in the best of 5 versus Fnatic. So there was just nothing to be excited about. They were bad all the way until it really counted, and then they were good.
But you're wearing Splyce gear, though. Why should I be excited for them? You can't tell me there's nothing to be excited about them.
Oof, why should you be excited
What
for
he's
that?
saying is the clothing that you now adorn your body with is proof that you don't know what you're talking about. That's just
Splyce was bad. No, don't do this to me.
On him with the Splyce.
They were bad.
Great merch.
This is not great merch. They literally have like
Those are cool
snake
pants.
skin. They have snake skins on their pants thingy. Oh my God. I'm not sure how I feel about this detail.
So you have nothing to get excited about?
You should be loving that, because then you should be wearing it all, and then all you do is awkwardly at the end of that, you go, well, time for this snake to shed his skin. And then if everything's cool, you just keep going. If not, you pull back up and you go.
He's already tried that line before on girls. It didn't work very well.
I would never use a line that for me. I would never,
Start
ever,
following my advice.
ever.
I could be a mentor for you, bro. I could take you to a new level. I could complete your training.
Thorn and Loco.
Give me that robe. I'll be the
game.
Jedi Master. You know?
You will never
Yes,
be
you
a
would
Jedi.
definitely
never.
be the Jedi in this scenario.
No, in this scenario, he'd be like, how does one learn this part? Not from a Jedi.
Oh my. Do you guys remember that infamous like keyboard smashing thing I did on when Team Liquid?
I
lost
remember
to
another
CLG?
infamous thing he did, but
What a ridiculous person he is, by the way, when he goes, do you guys remember that really famous thing I did in that documentary one time? And I was smashing it. It's like, well, yeah, I guess we do, right? Yeah, we're on board. Go on.
So I trashed the room. I trashed the entire room, and then just before we did that, like it was when we saw, I think, Kylo Ren. When we saw the new Star Wars movie. So when he got mad, like he trashed his room too. So inside Team Liquid, the management called me Kylo Ren, like as a joke, and I didn't know for a while. But the people would say, "Hi, Kylo." I'm like, "Why are you calling me Kylo?"
You really couldn't put 1 + 1 together there?
That was like a really sensitive moment. Like I was so mad that we lost. I didn't realize people would make fun of me for it.
You really don't understand why someone would have called you.
you realize the
Kylo Ren.
point of this story. Like the story ended as, I don't know why people would make fun of me.
I know, exactly.
I still don't understand.
I like to think of
next segment. Why do people make fun of local?
Duncan, it's going to be a short show today. I don't think we can go into that.
shorter. Still long. Still nice and long. So, what about J Team? Because we need to talk about them because we collectively predicted.
Remember, they were up
last
2-1
show.
after the
Yeah,
first.
that they were going to make it out.
Well, round robin section, yeah, exactly. And then they lost basically every game.
I think seeing how poor the group was overall made me feel like J Team was one of the better things that the group had to offer. So immediately I was thinking, okay, this team looks better than I expected from the LMS region. I think they'd probably get second place. And turns out that was just a day one overperformance.
Yeah, because they really struggled up against Splyce. I mean, Splyce came out to play, obviously, but I think in retrospect, looking at it, they didn't have a lot going for them besides Fofo. And if Fofo gets shut down, I think we see what happens with this day's results.
I think Fofo is a standout player. I think Lil V is decent at team fighting.
all right.
He has good mechanics, but the pieces around him, especially jungle and support, they just don't know how to set up things. They don't know how to set up a team fight, so everything they do is very one-dimensional. They don't play with vision that well. They don't draw the enemy team in and set up the fight in a way where their carries can really go at it. Like, they have really good engaging tools like Jarvan, Kled, and Alistar, but the engagers they were doing just weren't that great versus like conditional engage tools like Thresh and Gnar. So I think it really showed how bad the support and jungle were compared to the rest of the people in the group.
I think I'd even say that's why I would contrast this team with what IG's doing, because obviously we're going to talk about them later in the show. Because IG also practically doesn't have a support and jungle, but their carries are so insanely good, they're winning anyway. J-Team, as you saw from the way they even won their games, they were just sat back and people were just engaging into them and they would just win the end of a team fight. Like, you're not even choosing that. And then you look at that guy, the support guy they have, Koala. His game on Thresh was one of the worst I've seen of anyone in this whole tournament. Like, he wouldn't even hit hooks on people who were like 3 people in a group just away from you. Like, he would miss every direct hook. So I think I agree with you. Like, some of the carries had some skills. 4-4 was obviously good. Rest actually had a couple of good games. But as a team, they had no business getting out of this group. It's justified they didn't make it up.
I'm actually really surprised to hear you not liking the jungler on J-Team, because as a Korean, you would say Hana is #1, right?
No, I didn't even know he was Korean. I genuinely...
He's missed that one.
Hana! Oh my God. It's all right. Can we do a redo? Editor, can you...
It's all right. Loco, you hate puns anyway, so...
I was trying to think it through. I was like, wait, J-Team doesn't have a Korean. They're that all-Taiwanese team. Why would he think they're Korean? I was like, is he actually Korean? I'm like, oh my God, I don't know anything about J-Team. Maybe he is Korean.
That's how much we know about Group B.
Yeah.
Well, FunPlus Phoenix did get out in the end. At least for me, after they lost to Splyce, I was somewhat worried, but they looked really bad after that. Sure. And they came back super hard and super dominant. And for me, honestly, one of the biggest surprises for me this tournament in a pleasant way has been Tian, who has looked amazing in some of these games.
Dude, these Chinese junglers are monsters. Tian, Karsa. And then there's that derpy third dragon.
And if they were here in other forms, obviously Ning used to be amazing, MLXG. That region has a lot of jungle.
I think it was Ming who actually had, in the LPL, twice as many kills as any other jungler, but 3 times as many deaths.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, so it's just
he's on some Brett Favre level stuff, and it's like, I'm going to get a lot of touchdowns, I'm going to throw a lot of interceptions as well, boys. You better believe this. You know? No, I also think as well, the way that the group ended for FPX was such a great sign, because another thing you hadn't seen in this group was, where was all that MVP level stuff from Doinby? Like, where was this guy everyone was bragging about from the LPL? Well, finally, in that last game, you got a game where he could do one of his picks. He did the Renekton, he got to the staff, like everything went perfect in that game, and you actually got to see how he can carry a game, because he was a monster in that very, very last match.
This is what
he was everywhere on the map on that Renekton. It was ridiculous.
I mean, he could get away with this with all the picks that he has. It's, the Scion, even though it wasn't that pretty, in theory, all of his picks pop off this way, because nobody lanes against Malphite, Renekton, and Scion or Nautilus in the mid lane, so the element of surprise should be pretty good for them going into a BO5.
And part of this was like the quintessence of their style, right? Which is, we're going to move Doinby into the side lanes to create kill threat and pressure, and kind of have him abdicate mid, but try and get the other lanes ahead.
So I like their draft and their style so much better when the mid and jungle actually works, when it's Renekton, Gragas, and you can really play off of each other. I think their team functions so much better.
True.
Like in the earlier parts, where they were running stuff like Scion, Elise, who don't play that well with each other, and sometimes Scion can have a hard time getting priority versus stuff like Akali, then I think their draft falls apart. I think they think way too much about team fight, like how can we draft the best team fight comp? And they identify with that too. Doinby said in interviews, I think we're the best team fighting team. I think we have the best coordination. And they lean into that way too much, and they got away with it in this group, but I don't think they're gonna get away with it when they're facing better opponents in quarters.
Also, LWX has rebounded from the horrific first game that he had in this tournament, but we've also seen him play Vayne a couple games now. And is this something because of their style, like Doinby roaming to the side lanes, at least trying to get LWX maybe a little bit ahead, so you're not punished so hard in the laning phase, playing for that late game, playing for those team fights?
I mean, when you hit rock bottom, there's no way to go for bot. So I don't think he could have gone any worse, but yes, like having mid and jungle win and just dive bot over and over again, and then you get all that farm, much easier to play AD carry, and he has been inting a lot less, and he's staying away from Kai'Sa, which has been good for him.
The Vayne pick is interesting because she was buffed. people tried her, were terrible at her, and then they just got forgotten. So maybe there's a way for Vayne to become more prevalent because she still has a really strong AD gain in her tumbles when she ults.
So the problem is there's so much focus on support roaming nowadays, right? You have Pyke, you have Thresh, you have Rakan, you have Nautilus. These champions are amazing.
We actually haven't seen much Pyke, which we should talk about, but yeah.
When they get to mid game and these champions have, or when they go to mid lane and these champions start affecting mid and jungle, they're terribly like frightening to play versus. But Vayne has no tools for wave clear whatsoever. You're just sitting there autoing. I think she's the only champion in game that is purely single target. Every other champion has skills that does AoE things. And then compared to Kai'Sa, compared to Xayah, you're going to get pushed in all day. So I don't think we're going to see a lot more Vayne.
I'm going to think of a champion that is single target as well.
Keep thinking.
It's going to be another one that's really old, not the last 50 that come out with 700 dashes, like an ult that should be something, they're all ridiculous, aren't they?
They sneaky played Caitlyn today.
That's not single target though. AoE Q.
Oh, her Q. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's no other.
There's not many.
Game.
There's not many.
No, there is no other.
I mean, I
champion.
have to go through a list of like 160 in my head, so it's going to take a while. So please continue. You thought I was going to give you an answer right away? Like, this is going to take a while.
But yeah, I think the Vayne pick was good for that situation. I don't even think it was good for that situation. He should have picked
Plus,
something
what if
else.
Vayne just gets Rapid Fire Canyon? Checkmate. It's not only on one champion.
Is that Runan's Hurricane, right?
No, he means Runans, he means static.
Yeah.
Like if you get Runans and static,
Yeah.
yes, you do
Technically,
AoE. Yeah. Rapid fire increases your range, but you're still single target. I'm technically right.
Wow, knowledge.
Yeah, well done.
So where do we see FunPlus Phoenix going after this? Because I think even though
Back home.
they turned it on, like are they they turned it on late in the day where they looked really good. Is this something they can keep up in the quarterfinals? Are they going to get dumpstered by a 2 seed?
Remember, there is a world in which they might be playing one of their fellow LPL teams.
RNG,
IG, absolutely possible.
SKT still up in the air
Tough
too.
matchups, but if they show up, I think they could easily go all the way. I mean, it's just if they're a coin flip team that depends on 50-50 chance to play at their peak, it's just 3 tosses of a coin and you win worlds.
Wait, that's not how it works. If you go to Vegas and then you take 50 bets over and over again, you don't end up a millionaire. You end up broke. You end up looking like that.
I'm not telling you what the odds are. I'm telling you just have to flip it 3 times.
So first of all, he's doing this. He's literally doing the Star Wars, like Han Solo. Like, don't ever tell me the odds, kid. Like, secondly, why are you doing the whole? Why are you doing some like Weldon Green level stuff of like, if you can win one game, you can win another game.
I did forget that it was a best of 5 series, so you technically would have to flip 9
Multiple
times
times.
at least. So it's less likely. But if they get a good matchup, I could see them beating their next opponent because they have a unique style. Like that's the thing that is going for
Yeah,
it.
sure.
Who do you think is their best matchup?
Yeah.
You
Let's
have
start. Well,
G2
Splyce is definitely their best matchup.
No, but they can't play.
Oh, they can't play them.
Yeah.
That's right. So
That's why, to me, I think just getting another LPL team.
Team
like,
Liquid.
Team Liquid.
I think Team
the
Liquid
2
would be
seed.
a good matchup for them.
I mean, based on the LPL finals, RNG, that might be a pretty good matchup for them. I think they enjoyed that.
That was pretty one-sided. Good point. Good point.
Whereas the problem here is they just have to stay away from Group A, don't they? They do not want G2 in the round of 8.
Yeah, I think G2 would body them.
That's the real danger matchup for me. Because obviously, like, and no, listen, there's also a world, by the way. It's absolutely not impossible that SK Telecom
Loses 2 games to Royal.
Look who
That's
they've
definitely possible.
They've got Fnatic in their group as well. Like, there's still a lot of play in both those last 2 groups.
And why I said lose 2 games because they might lose the 1 game and then lose the tiebreaker to Royal. So there's that possibility as well. Probably not so likely, but you do have to say the first game between SKT and Royal went the distance. It was probably the most exciting match we've had in the world so far. Very close.
We actually watched that one in the VOD review, and it was really close, but when we saw it, it felt like a lot of it was individual people just getting
it
caught
wasn't
out.
clean.
It was just a one big global fest.
Well, they played it wrong, right? SKT should have spread the map and applied pressure, and Royal was just picking them off, and Faker was TPing late. It was a mess of a game. I'm not saying it was great League of Legends. I'm just saying it was close and exciting.
The interesting thing for me was that Uzi was not very good mechanically. Here, has Xayah ultimate and just gets completely bodied. This was actually the 3rd time this game where spells were thrown at him. He has the spell to get out, doesn't use it, and it cost the team the fight.
That's one of the things about this meta this year, especially, that has been so startling from all the past years, is The amount of times if the ADC just gets caught, the fight's over for your team is ridiculous now. Like I've seen that happen quite a few occasions.
There's no chance.
The engage tools are too strong. Gragathy flash, Rakan with R flash, or just RW.
The game's only going to continue in that direction because the more champions you add, the more tools you can come up with to defeat whatever composition the other person comes up with.
Yeah, I mean, Riot isn't in the favor of adding great protection champion, and the best protection champion in the game pretty much got killed in Tahm Kench. Like, Tahm Kench is not really a pick anymore. I know we did see.
What about Braum?
Braum is okay. The problem
It's not as anti-fun.
That's true. Tahm Kench is horrible.
That's counterplay, exactly.
The problem with Braum is a lot of times you don't get to do much in lane and then you get pushed in. His roam is okay. I guess we could see more Braum. Braum isn't terribly out of the meta. It's just the tools that he's bringing. The defensive tools are much weaker than the offensive tools. That's just the easiest way to put it. So Braum versus Rakan, most people would rather have Rakan. Like
I think some game devs could take that philosophy and implement it in their games.
I wonder who.
No comment.
Subtle.
And game is more fun when we see more offensive tools in the game, though. When we see these players get to show off like what they can do more so than no fun here, no fun there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you ever play a game called Risk, the board game?
Yeah.
The team that is attacking, their die are always stronger than the defending team. Actually, it's the opposite. You need a special.
Great point.
You need a special card for it. You need a special card for it. I'm always winning that game, so I thought that's the way things were.
First off, it's a terrible game.
You didn't like Risk?
No, it's terrible. It's RNG.
Also, just as a counter to what Loco said there,
World domination.
I know what
It's better
it
world
means.
domination game.
If you are a casual fan and you purely want the aesthetic joy of watching like team fights and players getting loads of kills and a star player popping up, yeah, obviously this meta is going to be way better. My problem is, I always say, like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, it doesn't have to be season 4 or season 9. You can have more of a healthy middle ground. And so the problem for me is in most sports and competitive disciplines I enjoy, there should be like counterplay, and especially when you say no fun, there actually, I think, needs to be options and tools like that. Like you can see in MMA, there are some amazing fighters where their style is to shut down your strengths, it's to take away that. And if someone can do that, I get it. It doesn't have the same thrill as watching like a knockout or something amazing, but there is something amazing about watching someone impose their sort of will in that way and shut down everything you want to do, neutralize all your strengths, like some of the great Korean League of Legends teams could do. So I just wish there was more, either what we could kind of like flow back between the two. You could have part of the split be like that, part the other one. Or let's just have years where it veers between them, because I like a bit more options.
But to enjoy your idea of like anti-fun or like shutting down other people's strengths, you really have to understand the game.
That's
and
the
it's
problem.
not great for casual fans.
Yes,
when the
agreed.
game is a lot slower, when the game is about rotation, when the game is about vision, the only people that are really having fun are like stuck up Korean enthusiasts.
Me, Korean fellatio enthusiasts, Loco.
Like,
Agreed.
I was having great fun.
but Riot has.
Do you not remember there was one time where, and here's the thing, I even know from knowing Monty for a long time, this isn't actually true. It wasn't his favourite game. He was just extending like the concept with a bit of hyperbole. When there was that game where like Jin Air played against, I can't remember which team. It was the game where there was like one kill in like a whole game, and like
it was a joke.
It was a pick comp and a disengaged comp, just following each other around the map for about 50 minutes. And there was like one kill, and then the team just won the game. And he used to lie and say like, that was my favourite game of League of Legends ever, because it was just taking towers only. And the thing is, the team that was losing was actually correctly like backing off around the map, waiting for their chance or whatever. So like, it clearly wasn't totally true. It definitely isn't your favourite game of League of Legends.
Look,
like,
I love.
just
It's a game about objectives. I like it when teams play compositions perfectly. Now, do siege comps, is a perfect siege comp played without kills? Yes, it is. That's just true.
I feel like if we were to go play capture the flag paintball, you'd be the guy that is just taking the flags and never gets hit by anything. It's like, oh yeah, he got the flag, but there's not a single shot on it or on his gun.
To be fair, that would be pretty impressive.
It would be.
To be fair, that would be cool, and I would be baller for doing that, to be perfectly clear. But it's not that I enjoy siege comps. I just enjoyed the fact that it was a siege comp and it was played flawlessly.
Yes.
Like if you were to play a pick comp flawlessly, there might be a lot of kills. So yes, I just enjoyed the fact that a strategy was played particularly well.
I mean, every comp is a siege comp now. All the win condition got really convoluted.
That's not true.
Wait.
You've seen FPX's comps, none of them are Siege.
So beforehand, there was a lot of different win conditions that you could do. Like you could actually run straight Siege comp, right? Like there was a question regarding how are we going to get inhibitors? How are we going to break the game open? And the new Baron fixed all of that. The new Baron made it how every game ends or how inhibitors are broken is always the same.
You're talking about 2015. You're like,
what do you mean? No, I
that's
mean
a while ago.
I mean the game beyond like the new Baron. Once the Baron buff got changed into giving super minions extended range, or the cannon minions extended range and additional damage on turret, I think every comp inherently became like the end game for every comp became we're gonna take Baron and then we're gonna seize and we're gonna.
That's what happened to the game.
Yeah, I mean, so that's basically what happened. Every comp got turned into a Siege comp for their win condition.
Why do you think they did that, considering that when we saw the cannon minions have the shorter range, teams were still pretty good at protecting the cannon minion and applying pressure to turrets?
I think it's personally better because it still gives you a different tool versus you're just flat out stronger, because I think that was what the initial problem was. You get Baron and then you just fight and there's no way the other team has an option to beat you, whereas now, combat-wise, you can still lose, but you have another way of being stronger than your opponent, so it forces you to be a little bit more tactical.
So they did that. They said it in a devlog. There was a huge problem when people would play champions like Ziggs, people would play champions like Anivia. It was near impossible to get inhibitor turrets when they were doing things correctly, because they'd be able to zone out huge range and they'd be able to delete minions without even getting in range of getting engaged.
Who was the beta tester? Froggen when they're playing
Easy Hoon? 2014 Easy Hoon?
Who the beta tester was.
You gotta deal with this Baron thing.
I'll do a sport analogy. You know how every single NFL rule change has benefited the offense and made it harder for the defense, so we get more touchdowns and we get more gun shows? Almost every single change that Riot has made the game faster, and they've been purposeful about making the game faster, making the game about more action. They've taken away vision tools. They made sure like you can end the game when you're ahead. They've given more snowball tools. And they also want the game to be a little bit back and forth. That's some of the changes they're making, but they do not like long drawn out games where the winner is clear and we're just going through the process of playing out the game.
I mean, I would argue that over the years, even in this meta, comebacks have become extremely unlikely just because now most pro players have, 3, 4, 5 years of playing the game under their belt, and most teams are pretty good at vision control these days, and it's super hard to retake control around a Baron or something. I mean, I remember one of the things that Riot never liked to talk about when I was casting is that if you actually looked at gold lead at 10 minutes, it was like an indicator of the team winning something like 80+% of the time.
I think it still is. It might be a little lower.
If you remember, the famous stat used to be that if a team just had something like a 2K gold lead at some point in the game, they were like 70% to win the game. Some gold lead that never feels like a lot. You always think that's a team fight away or something. But yeah, it was a pretty reliable indicator, I remember.
Yeah, it was up. I know at certain points.
Same as
it obviously varied based on
there was
the
also
match.
like a similar one where like if you just lost your first inhib, you had like a 30% chance to win the game or something. The problem is in the game, you never with like your eyes think that's the game. The game's not over. We defended it. Okay, we lost one inhib, we can come back, but apparently you just lose most of the time.
Well, it's also they tried to create rubber band mechanics like with the bounties now, so that there would be some level of coming back. But my point is that most pro players are so good at this stage that they're not going to die. They're not going to die for the bounty. Once they get that much ahead, they're just not going to get killed anymore.
Riot has made the game more snowball-y, but with better comeback tools, yes. But pro players have gotten good enough where those comeback tools
That's what I'm
don't
saying.
matter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The game state is easier to come back from, but the comebacks don't happen because pro teams have gotten better. That's just what happened.
I think the mistake is, just from my perspective coming back into League of Legends, when I was talking to you about this, Loco, before we started doing this show again, was I said, macro really hasn't changed that much. Like there isn't. As soon as I learned about how warding works now, I was like, oh, there's
less
some
wards.
Yeah, there's fewer wards, but at the same time, teams have gotten better and more coordinated around playing around these objectives. So, like you're saying, yeah, the rubber band mechanics exist, but these aren't mistakes that pro players are going to make these days.
So we talked about it before. Samsung White, they revolutionized how vision was done and how people play the game. They're very fast about timings. They get turrets and then they create vision pockets where you don't have vision, and they're daring you. Walk into us. You don't have vision here. If you don't walk into us, we're going to take the dragon. If you don't walk into us, we're going to take Baron. And they play champions like Rengar. They play champions like Thresh, where once vision was cut off and you had to check into them, they would almost always get that engaged with a thresh hook, with a rain guard jump on top of you. And that's the core of the vision game that's being played today. And it's much, much worse because back then, jungler could buy Sightstone, or jungler could buy Green Smite. Support could buy Sightstone. So you'd be able to get vision faster and you'd have more wars. But now only supports can have access to Sightstone. And once pink wards are placed down, it's really hard to get your own pink wards down also because pink wards are, you can see the pink wards so you can defend them. So it's gotten much worse.
Well, I would also argue that part of this is the fact that we don't really see tanks in the meta. Because at least tanks have a level of safety of face checking things. And also, coincidentally, I think that's one of the reasons why Garen Yuumi is so powerful, because it allows you to face check much more effectively and painlessly than you can with other compositions. But outside of that Garen, there's not a lot that people are playing because the time to kill is so low now. You just die so fast, and tanks. When you put all the emphasis on the laning phase, then tanks are less powerful, right? Those get bullied around, dove under the turret in the laning phase. But you really need them to like.
The only way to be a tank now is buying Stoneplate. Like that's really the only way that you can say, yes, I will not die in this team fight. Otherwise, you're gonna get mauled. And even I think it was Visachachi on an 8k health Cho'Gath with Stoneplate still dies in like 5 seconds to a Kai'Sa. That's just Ginsu's proccing constantly. Like,
there's a lot of true damage in the game, and also, as we said, like champions like Kai'Sa and Xayah can melt tanks really easily and conquer. It's a new keystone. I'm sure you've learned a little bit about it, but it's a keystone that allows bruisers to do true damage and also get HP back. So in an extended lane state, and once like split push situations happen, tanks can't last versus bruisers that long.
I mean, to be fair, part of the announcement was that they're going to be nerfing that in the future. So that's definitely a problem Riot has identified. We should talk, because you weren't here last time. What are your thoughts on the changes to the jungle for next year?
Here's the thing. I saw only the games announcement. So I am aware with some of the changes.
We're moving on.
I am aware with some of the changes. I am aware with some of the changes in that they are. Can you please say them, because I know some things, I don't want to say what I think that I
When you get the dragon, it now actually affects the terrain of the map.
Yeah, okay, so it's what I expected. Yes. No. Okay. Yeah. I think it's really cool. From the feedback from players that have tested it, they really enjoy it, and it makes it a lot more dynamic.
So my complaint was, if this is going to be real, we need to see Dragon order and spawn. Because like you have to know how to draft if it's going to drastically change the map. Otherwise, just RNG.
In the pre-game lobby, he thinks...
They did not say...
Again, I feel like I don't want to say anything because I know some of this, but I don't know if I should know.
It's always hard because being in this situation, you're like, what has been announced, right? So we won't talk about it. Well, Thor, what are your questions about Group A? Let's get to Group A.
Yes, today, baby. Let's
Were
do
you
it.
one of the people?
I saw the whole thing.
I didn't get to check on you on this before the tournament. Were you someone coming in who had high hopes for Griffin?
No, I wasn't at Worlds.
You weren't a believer?
I'm here. I thought they'd make second at least, for sure. I did not think Cloud9 would make it out of that. And my hopes were still from last year. So my hopes for Griffin were not about this year. It was like, this is a team that came in with a bunch of new rookies that was supposed to be the new era of Korean talent. So I held that hope for this year. So I'm still riding on Griffin really high. Now, today gave me way more faith than I had in the first day. In fact, it gave me a ton of confidence towards the Korean teams, but I'm still a little hesitant, but it looks like the firing of the staff has done really well for them.
What? Because I'll even say as well.
What do you mean what? It's true. They fired a guy and now
But they
they're
brought him
kicking
back,
ass.
well, technically, didn't they?
No, well, they fired him, but it wasn't like he was doing much in the organization, and it's not like things have changed. I think, if anything, they kind of have made it like it's us versus them.
Addition by subtraction, Loco.
Wait a minute. On Listen Loco, I'm almost certain you said that you actually thought this was a really big deal. That, like,
Yeah, the
actually
CV Max.
was doing all the drafting and stuff.
We're not talking about CV Max getting fired. We're talking about Director
Oh, the director
Cho.
guy, right.
Yeah, Director Cho recently got fired, so I don't think that had a big deal.
He was just joking, surely.
No, I think it did have a big deal. I'm not joking.
Why? Wait, what effect do
That
you
made
think
them
he was
play better
have
in
on
the
team?
game? That they fired the director?
Yeah.
So if what was said by CV Max is true, that he was being disruptive in terms of the team, which again, it's a,
Let me
said,
add on to that. Let me add on to that, because still late, and Griffin's CEO Shark made an announcement. He didn't confirm what CV Max has said, but because some of the players called him a liar, right? He said he's saying untruthful things.
Calling who a liar?
CB Max.
Got it.
Viper and Sword spoke up in their interviews and they said, CB Max, grow up. CB Max, please stop saying untruthful things on your streams. So the Shark, the CEO, came out and he said, CB Max is a great coach and he played a huge role in Griffin getting all the way up here. He didn't confirm what CB Max has said, but he didn't unconfirm what CB Max has said. And he's actually admitted that CB Max played a huge role. So he's in a position where he can't.
So he said nothing.
He
No new information was acquired.
He did fire Cho. The Cho guy got fired. So I do think the signs are leaning towards CB Max is being truthful.
But you still strengthened my point in that the players were involved, at least in some degree, to telling these people, stop saying this, which is a huge distraction. You're here trying to win worlds.
Yeah, I think.
So getting rid of it is a big deal.
I think even under a scenario where Cho wasn't doing anything wrong and it was all CV Max's fault, the problem is that while this drama is perpetuating, the players are caught up in it regardless.
Yeah.
So who knows what the future holds? This could be like a temporary thing of removal of Cho. Like, we don't know how everything's going to shake out, but I don't think it's a coincidence that they looked a lot better today after some of this stuff seemed to get resolved.
I think it was so much harder for them to perform today, and they did it despite all the drama going on. Even with, like, if you go to a Griffin YouTube video, the dislike to like ratio is monstrously favorable for dislike. If you go to their Twitter, some of it is in English, some of it is in Korean. It's like, bring back CB Max, bring back CB Max, justice for CB Max. Like, I still think it's very disruptive, and they're doing it despite of all the things going on. Not that things have gotten better. It's still in a really hard situation, and they're getting through it.
Thing is, these results are more than just like promising because of the fact G2 is supposed to be the best team in the world. So if you stomp G2 twice in one day, that is big time stuff. Like, listen, G2 can lose games, but that's normally when they do the wacky draft or someone just ints in the game bizarrely. Like, these were games where they were just locked down the whole game. They were in these matches.
I mean, they had no chance to win in either of these games. That's what's crazy.
G2 busted out their prime picks too. The Zoe bottom lane, the mages, the Yasuo, like they were not holding back and they still got bodied, which is even more
alarming. Some of the combos Griffin pulled off in this game where they just insta delete you as well.
So what was crazy to me is in the first game, okay, we see Griffin and they're going to pull out the Jace with the Qiyana jungle and the Shen support, right? Totally body that game. So then what do we see next? Oh, it's G2 who picks the Jace and the Qiyana jungle and the Shen support. And then they get bodied again with those picks. So at this point, like, that's one of those statement games. It reminds me of 2015 Fnatic Tigers quarterfinal where Smeb was playing reverse matchups with Huni in the top lane and bodying him both ways.
Riven and
Hecarim.
Riven, Fiora, stuff like that.
Yeah. So they were playing reverse matchups and Smeb was destroying him in both matchups. And what's really disturbing for me is that in a way, this was kind of a best of three. Because we did see the adaptation, we did see them take the picks away, and yet it was incredibly one-sided both times. That is worrying.
It is worrying, but the one caveat I'll hold for G2 is that this team has not lost a best of 5 in, I think, 2 years. And
I mean, with this lineup.
So here's
with this lineup.
But here's the question.
Lost.
That's true. But if we were to play out today as a best of 5, do you think they would have won? Because I don't.
No, not today. But I do think that the mental resilience that they have has proven that a loss like this is unlikely to phase them. And so I think that the team will bounce back quite fine.
And also, I think their read on Griffin was, this is a team that's going to try to do stuff to us early, and if we can outscale them, then we'll beat them. And they had that confirmed in their first game versus Griffin, where they drafted a scaling comp. They had stuff like Ornn, they had stuff like Orianna, and they absolutely crushed Griffin. And in the first matchup of today, they did the exact same thing. They had stuff like Kayle, they had stuff like Ryze. They were trying to outscale Griffin, but Griffin just ran over them in early game. And I think a key factor of that is Tarzan playing
flipped
out of his mind. And they're also running things. So Tarzan is someone that is incredibly great at finding jungle path things, and his mechanic is so solid. But one thing I think he struggles with is matching risk versus reward. He's someone very hesitant to make early game risky plays. So when you give him incredibly good setups where you give him stuff like Qiyana has guaranteed ganks due to when she has her water element, you cannot flash away from her. So he has those guaranteed setup and he's able to crush with it. And the other game, they were playing stuff like Camille Elise, another more guaranteed setup for Tarzan. I think he really shines in these situations where the jungle setup is so guaranteed, and he can go through with it every single time. And on top of that, keep making sure he's farming and outscaling the enemy jungler on 2.
And that was obviously, again, even though they made this internal change within the org, they are sticking with Sword. They're not playing Doran at all, but it looked way better this time around. It wasn't a problem.
Well, and let's talk about how they use Sword too, because Jace was a pick that we've seen from Sword. And then when Jace went over to G2, went back to the more tanky style on the Ornn. But what was surprising to me is that Griffin beat them with 2 very different compositions. You know, they come back and they get the Xayah, and then they're playing Galio mid with an Ornn top. So a lot of the burden goes onto Viper, which we know, you know, he's a great carry player and can shoulder that burden. But it's a pretty different look than their first game where they're playing like Akali Jace in their solo.
It looks
lanes.
a lot like an FPX comp, if you ask me. Like, it's just tanks, and then you're like, is there damage? I'm like, I guess. If they catch us. Like, there's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure for him to carry this game.
Well, good thing he was 9-0-6 then in this game, right?
Which is why Xayah can get away with it, because you can't jump Xayah. It's impossible. So if she's good with a Galio and an Ornn busting her items to the next degree, this Xayah should carry. So it's good to me to see that teams are prioritizing these champions so heavily that you can't have them as a single threat, but it's also kind of sad to see that teams can't find an answer.
That's also like those 2 comps for that tiebreaker as well. Like, that's pretty ballsy from Griffin's side there. Like, you could see a world where with those champions, G2 just styles on someone. If they get ahead early, they just destroy you in all the fights. How much damage they could have there.
In the jungle matchup, it's like Lee, people are picking Lee because he's a safe blind, because if you've got nothing else to pick, you can get away with it. But clearly Qiyana, I think, has come one step above, where you can take her and put whatever champions you want around her, and it's still just going to be better, because I don't care how good your insect is going to be. One Qiyana ultimate that catches a team is a win fight right there.
Also, one big thing is Griffin usually can style on people in terms of draft because they have the bigger champion pool, and their players are way more, has depth in terms of being able to swap around champion, playing weird stuff that other people don't play. I think for the Griffin versus G2 matchup, for Qiyana jungle and Shen support, G2 doesn't really have a great Qiyana jungle, nor is their Shen the greatest, where if you give it to Griffin, their Qiyana jungle is so scary, and their Shen support is also one of Lihan's signature picks. So they actually lose out on the draft, which is scary.
Consider that Qiyana is actually the only current jungler that can run Mobies. No other jungler runs that. So you have way more jungle pressure in every lane constantly. And if you get ahead, it's just over. You can also see why she ints if she falls behind, because you have a Moby jungler that can't do anything. But when she snowballs, you can't come back from that.
Yeah, on top of Mobius, whenever she's holding an element, you get faster movement speed if you're near that element. So she moves around so fast on the map.
So I have a question. Now that G2 is locked into the second place, is it possible that whoever G2 faces in the quarterfinal, whether it's FunPlus Phoenix, maybe SKT or Royal or IG, are we going to have a quarterfinal that's potentially the best match of the entire tournament?
If they play SKT, I think so. I think that would be it.
That would be a banger.
G2 SKT.
I mean,
what everyone wants to see.
It would be sad. It would be super sad, though, right?
Sure.
Because that's what happened last year at Worlds, right? Too, was we got the best match in the quarters.
I think we'd still have good matches in semis and finals, though. I think the other teams can level up.
That's the thing, though. Other teams have to level up. And we don't know if we got the best match until we see the entire tournament play out. I think SKT, G2, I guess we can even toss in FPX, IG in there. These are probably like the top 4 teams, and we have to see how they develop.
IG's already over Griffin after a bunch of wonky BO1. Griffin's in the mix, right?
I forgot about Griffin completely. I'd probably take FPX out, and it'd probably be IG, G2, SKT, Griffin.
Yeah,
those are the top 4.
There is a possibility, though, that given Griffin's performance today, where they looked incredibly clean, that, Griffin, if G2 hits SKT, that Griffin might end up being the only other team competitive with G2 in this entire event.
One thing I have to say, though, is, right, so on the last episode we did 2 days ago, we had a little segment where we were talking about Mickey X, and we gave the contrast to like Mad Life, where he like revolutionized the support position, and he was so mechanical from it, and he obviously all the picks and the vision control. The only thing is though, like, you took it too far, Mickey X. We didn't mean you literally are Mad Life. After seeing you play that Blitzcrank, you are nothing like Mad Life. Like, Mad Life, he was an amazing Blitzcrank. That was one of the most appalling Blitzcranks I've ever seen in my life.
Do you see it?
Because, you know, people were saying, like, it was a close game. It was like, he missed 15 hooks in a row or something. Like, what do you want?
Carlos tweeting at him, I'm going to put you in the academy team if you do that again.
Because that's what's funny is that he is a player, Mickey X, as well, where he has also, by the way, played champions that, you know, if you go and look at his solo queue, he hadn't played very much. He's picked them out of nowhere. But, like, there is a limit to even what he can do. Because the bizarre thing is, he's so insanely good at all the other hook champions, you would think actually he'd be amazing on Blitzcrank. But his feel for it was so off.
The new range, hard to get
Probably
used to.
was. Yeah.
Well, it's it is a longer trajectory, right?
Sure, but at least practice it a few times.
Yeah.
The mechanics haven't changed so much that it's ridiculous.
Or maybe Mickey X was just preparing for his own League of Legends related Joker movie style role. That was just him with the. You haven't seen it yet?
Oh, what did he say? It's like, I hope my death makes more money than my Targons, I guess.
I hope my death makes more sense than my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you know the line, but you haven't seen the movie?
No, I've seen the movie.
Oh, sorry. I heard you say you did.
Speaking a little on G2, one thing that's so weird and that's so hard for me to do with G2 is they have these happy games, but they have these incredible like blowouts versus G2 or versus Griffin. So it's really hard for me to rate G2 somewhere. And I know I really shouldn't, but because they're like that goofy team, they joke around a lot. There's always a feeling in the back of my head where I'm like, maybe they weren't so serious about it this time and they play the best of 5. They're going to be giga serious. They're going to play like their life is on the line. Even when they lost the games to Griffin, they were already in quarters, right? And then Wonder also talked about it in the interview. Once we're guaranteed, then we're going to fool around a little.
And like I said,
Wonder was definitely fooling around in those matches. He looked terrible. Anyway.
And the implication is that's why they did the Blitzcrank pick, didn't they? Because they already knew like it didn't matter if they won that game or not. They would just probably trying to save a pick and just mess around a bit.
And so where is their level? Where do we place them at?
And even though I think saying that is incredibly arrogant and maybe not in a... But G2 is also powered by arrogance in a weird way where their confidence is actually part of their strength. Kind of like me in some ways. But regardless, having them come into this game, I think the attitude is, well, if we made quarterfinals, we're going to have to beat everybody anyway, so who cares who we face next? Because if you are at that level of confidence, you actually don't care.
I mean, I saw from the coach, they felt like they just played all games today were bad, and they just happened to have beaten 2 teams that were
just not good enough
way worse.
Exactly,
so
exactly.
I think they just take the entire day as a big L and they're going to be fine moving forward. But I don't think that they'll be, hey guys, let's get giga serious for quarters, because I think that's not their style.
If you remember, I made this point during the split because at one point in time, I think they were like, 10-0 or something. They were like undefeated at one point. I even made the point, like, forget like, you know, because obviously they'll admit themselves they're doing wacky picks and they're trying fun stuff out to keep themselves more. But I actually made the point that I think they even need to do that. Like, I think if you look at this team and the personalities they have, I think they would actually not enjoy and not be as dialed in if they had to play pure default League of Legends all the time with only the power picks. Like,
it's weird, right? That's like one of their strengths.
Yeah, so the thing is, on the one hand, they're not a team that could ever probably 18-0 or split or go undefeated. But at the same time, like, that's also why they come up with what looks like troll picks that end up being amazing innovations in the game.
Yeah, true.
I hear their comms, and half their comm videos is just flaming the coach right away. Be like, Grabs, get out of here. You're already losing us the game. Stop into your draft. Like, any other team, like, imagine a Korean team would tell that to their coach.
Was that ridiculous one where Jankos had to play Sejuani in the LAC. And I think they, like, Caps have, like, Kiana or something, and he just bodied the whole game. And Jankos was just complaining as they were hitting the Nexus to win the game. Like, so you got to actually play League of Legends this game. I'm playing Sejuani, like, just raging because he didn't even get to, like, have any fun whatsoever. So they're actually complaining about games they win at the professional level. Like, this is too boring for me.
I really wish I could hear Jankos' comms today.
Oh, they're ridiculous.
He was atrocious today. He was so bad.
Dude.
Him versus Tarzan, there's another story. I haven't heard anyone on social media addressing. All the Twitter analysts have just all of a sudden gone back. Like like the old, what's it called, groundhog, just gone back into its hole and there'll be no more analysis. Because that's one of the things, right, coming into this tournament, one of the main reasons why a lot of people weren't very high on Griffin is they thought that Griffin's style, as it goes by how Tarzan plays, won't be effective. They thought, right, he won't be able to be so controlled because people will just wreck him early, or he won't make exploitative moves when he needs to.
So they felt like this style that is based on information would not work.
Basically, meanwhile, Jankos on the other side, he's supposed to be the guy who's going to get it all going early, and he was good. So if you'd have asked people to bet coming in this group which jungler does better, I think everyone would have picked Jankos.
So the thing is, G2 usually has really strong early game, and they have really great laners across the board. But when you're Kayle versus Jace, when you're playing Ryze mid, you're not going to have the same kind of priority. G2's identity versus Griffin changed dramatically from their scrims, where they felt like, we can't blow these guys out in the early game, we have to scale to beat them. So in the first 2 matches they played scaling comps, and in the first time, Tarzan really messed up, so he got kind of screwed. And in the second game, Tarzan went off because he had those priorities. He could do the kind of invade.
But go back to the first game we saw between these two teams, which was an incredibly clean victory. And yes, it was Sword's first game in months and months, so that probably didn't help.
Their level 1 was really bad.
I did not think that the first game was actually very clean from Griffin's part.
No, from G2's part.
G2.
G2 crushed them in the first game, crushed them.
But okay, the thing about that game, though, is if you do that early game over and over again, like how many times does Tarzan get screwed out of smiting his Krugs and not hitting level 3 and not getting that dive off? That game changes completely if he gets that dive off.
True. But I still think Taliyah is a very rough dive to get off, but that was the big point in that game, the Wonder stealing Krugs away from Taliyah.
So Griffin thinks of that dive as nearly guaranteed, and they value Renekton incredibly highly. They either first pick Renekton, or if they're not going to first pick it, they're going to ban Renekton so the enemy team doesn't play it. Whether it's true or not, Griffin believes Renekton plus Elise or Renekton plus Taliyah will get that guaranteed dive off, and they draft like it and they play like it.
Well, I mean, if they've drafted, surely they know better than I do. They were trying it, so I think
the other teams aren't doing it though. Yeah. It's only Griffin like prioritizing Renekton that highly and banning Renekton that highly also. So maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
But yeah, we're taking a look at that game right now, and this is the one where it ended up being a pretty quick snowball for G2.
The one thing I didn't like about Griffin from my end here was I wish they didn't commit to the Lucian, because G2 was banning a lot of carries in the bottom end, and Lucian, made sense as an early game all in, but you didn't need to commit that hard to the early game. If you're going to focus the top side with Renekton and Taliyah, you might as well have a safer scaling option in the bottom lane to make sure that if things don't go right, you still have an option late game. It's not, hey guys, game was over at 2 minutes because the guy lost Krugs.
I think what's really going to be interesting is what kind of identity G2 chooses to have versus Griffin if they ever match up again in finals. Because they can only match up in finals from how I understand it. If you're in the same group as somebody.
No, they can reach.
You can still
match
reach in semis.
Are you
just logically you'd have to be able, wouldn't you?
Just RNG.
Because they can place you somewhere different.
No, but that couldn't work for all the teams though, could it?
You can draw the spot in the bracket where you'd be on the same side for semis.
Okay, so if they meet as early as semis, I'm very curious what their identity is going to be versus Griffin, because G2 is kind of in this weird spot where a lot of teams suffer from the problem of we are only good at one thing, so we only have one identity, right? It's not like they can pick multiple identities, but G2 actually can. They can be that scaling team, or they can be that very early game lane focused team. And they chosen to be the late game focused team versus G2 or versus Griffin. And I wonder what they're going to do next time they match up.
Perfect segue moment, because I know another team that was hyped for having all good players in all lanes. They were supposed to be able to play all the styles, unlike a lot of Western teams and NA teams. Cloud9, right? And actually, I have to say, I think this is a good segue because that leads into the problems of Cloud9. Because if you look at the way they played this tournament, one area you can criticize the team in before you even get into how the matches played out is like the people they chose to field, the drafts they chose to do, the style they chose.
We are paid by Cloud9.
I'm real, man. Don't have me on a show if you can't handle that.
Look, their new hashtag is Dare You, so you're daring right now.
So that's my problem is but this isn't even like some of the other teams where I can just look at like the gameplay of Splyce. Was it right? Was it wrong? Like I feel as though Cloud9 was a team that came in, I thought, with some potential in this group. It wasn't impossible, especially because for me, what made this group interesting is you knew there was possibilities of G2 and Griffin beating each other. So in that world, now all you need to do is steal that one game off G2 or something. You're in the mix at that point in time. Anything can happen. Whereas you look at the way they played it out, I actually have to say, from when I look at who they fielded and how they chose to draft, I don't think Cloud9 was very confident in this tournament. I would have to suspect that in scrims they got wrecked or something went really badly. And the whole Svenskeren angle, even though they played him towards the end, still no good explanation.
And they played deftly finally, so Loco could be happy. But just thinking about this, we've said it time and time again. This is a team that got rid of Jensen, got rid of a major star player, and made the transition over to Niski. Your star player is the MVP of the summer split.
Yep.
This guy is giving you your best chance to win. This is where you don't... they're basically trying to play the starless meta. And just, win laning is so important like it is right now in League of Legends. Playing without stars is dangerous.
Here's why the mid lane champion pool is not as wide as it should be. In top lane, it was having an injury. Bottom lane, unfamiliar. Every lane is losing. Now suddenly Svenskeren's got nowhere to go. You can't gank anywhere. You're losing every game with Svenskeren. You put Blabber in, a guy that plays like solo queue, suddenly you're having success. Your laners are finding something, or at least your jungler finds a kill. Blabber makes more sense. Put Blabber in, but turns out when you go into the game, still your laners are struggling. They're still down. They're still making individual mistakes. So I think it wasn't so much that the jungle was the issue, but that the laners were a problem that didn't allow the jungle to do well. So they had to put a different player in.
But if the laners are doing so badly and they brought another laning sub, why don't they play deftly? One thing that definitely...
If G2's getting bodied in scrims in lane, I think Cloud9 is getting bodied in scrims.
Yeah, but Loco, the thing is, Cloud9 always makes it out of groups, and also Sneaky gets a world buff. Oh, right, does that just stop working at one point in time, like every other pattern in human history, and you can't therefore just predict the rest of human history based on the things that happened before? I always tell people, don't use narratives from years ago, like Sneaky being really good. Why would him being awesome in 2016 make him be great now? Why would him being really good last year make him good now? Like, it didn't carry over at all, because he's not a good player at the moment, unfortunately.
It tilts me even more because obviously this happens more in traditional sports because most commentators in the esports space will not do this. But when you also start talking about, Cloud9 always does well at Worlds. Now, this group of players, most of them, were part of that semifinal run last year. But before that, there's very little similarity. So the Sneaky is the only through line to all of this. And especially when we start talking about, this team has been good for the last 20 years in professional sports. I'm like, no, it's literally entirely different people. There is no connection there besides the owner. Like, if that's the only thing you can really, I think, grab onto. So it's really just a disingenuous narrative in a lot of ways, like you're saying. But especially when the Sneaky one, I think, is perhaps a little more apt because at least it's been going on since 2013-ish, but it stopped a while ago, as you're saying, and he certainly wasn't good this tournament. And then, but overall, like, you can't just continue this like Cloud9 is NA's hope because the team is entirely different.
And I also just feel as though, unfortunately, at least from what I've seen thus far, this feels like an indictment of the LCS. Because as I've seen Clutch have zero chance to get any of these games, and I've seen Cloud9 give this weak-willed performance.
That's a great segue.
Think about some of the players we had.
I got something.
Like think about Niski was literally being called an MVP candidate as well. People wanted him to be in the mix there for best mid, etc. He didn't show me anything in this group. And by the way, I did tell you coming into this group, that was my biggest worry was jungle and mid for Cloud9, their two best roles. Everyone in this group's got the killer jungle mid.
You brought the perfect point. The problem is the LCS. The LCS is not good enough. How do we make the LCS better? How do we increase the competition? I believe I have found the solution, and I've been pitching it to some people, and I believe
Can I guess?
Correct.
Invest into academy.
No. Can I guess?
It's kind of like...
I thought the guess was going to be that we just have something like the first split's like a combined EU and LCS. Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool. But the idea was, what if...
Rift Rivals just have a split with their team.
Send half of NA to EU and half of EU to NA.
Here's what it is. Academy is a waste of time. You're not playing for anything. You're not playing for a spot. You're not playing for money. You're just playing to play.
And I say that, by the way, bearing in mind, good friend of the show, Kelsey Moser, actually won Academy as a coach.
She did. With
a young man named Sunday.
And I cast her, and it was a very good game.
I used to tell her how surreal that is, that she's actually coaching Sunday and then like winning any championship.
In the Academy, fucking 18-0.
Not quite sure that's where he wanted his career.
If you put your Academy team and you make the entire purpose of the team to defeat the LCS slot, and then make a junior team that's essentially Academy B, whose sole purpose is to defeat defeat the academy team, and you incentivize these players, and you literally just make their entire goal
Crumbz
to
is
win
here.
against your opponent. You actually have
what you guys
an
don't know,
internal competition for slots.
You're probably wondering, what has Crumbz been doing since the Overwatch League ended? He did some LCS. He's been away in Thailand training like Muay Thai wrestling. He's been going through the dojo, and then that's how he brought the similar. I like the concept is they must defeat like the one to prove they're
Hunger
worthy.
Games.
Yeah.
And then you bring in the next
Well,
one.
actually, it's more like the
next one.
Sith. It's more like the Sith, where you have to kill your master.
Exactly, right? And so if the top laner just cheeses the LCS top laner 5 games in a row, like, all right, man, you're out for a few games. Like, this guy's beating you. Clearly, you got to do
goes home.
And at least there's some use of the academy team with the LCS team.
Basically, Crumbz wants Cloud9 to actually run like a loser goes home wrestling match.
Yeah.
Where at the end, the winner climbs a ladder and takes the contract, and he's the LCS star, and the other one gets kicked out the league.
Yeah,
We'll bring
exactly.
all the
I'm not,
theatrics in.
I'm not going to lie. That would be really
Sounds amazing.
Because the thing is, you can also, I mean, you can make so much content out of that. You can just really have a good time with it. And your players are not going to be sad about it because, like, they're better. Like, you understand the system.
And
They're still gonna be
Loco,
sad. They will
Loco
still
would be the
sad.
perfect coach in the system because he's already used to pitting his players against each other. So.
I never did that. No, I was very good at getting everyone to be united against me, not against
That
each
actually
other.
is a good coaching skill, by the way. Jokes aside, that is a very valuable
Yeah, of
coaching
course.
skill.
What, get people to be united against you?
Yes,
a real
because
strategy.
of course it is.
You know what the end game for that
create
strategy
unity.
is?
No. Because here's why you do it. Because if you're the bad cop, then they'll actually like each other, and you just have to have the authority to discipline them, and then you could just be the bad cop forever, and it doesn't matter.
What happens at the end of the year? Your most valuable assets group up and tell the owner, get rid of the bad cop.
Should have been better.
So here's the thing. That's dumb for the owner to do. That's not a good ownership move.
So why did they kick you after that?
So here's the problem with that system. If the players can group up and tell the owner to get rid of the coach, the owner should immediately say, "Get in your place. You don't tell me who's coaching this team. I'm in control. Go away."
Bam.
I mean, maybe that will happen in the future, but even recently, the whole Griffin drama that we talked about, that's kind of what happened also. Of course, like the owner also wanted to coach out, but the owner basically got the players to group up, and players have such a huge voice in League of Legends right now, way more so than most owners, way more so than most coaches, because of the brands they have, because League of Legends, we always compare it to
But
basketball.
Loco, you're a
right?
coach with a brand.
Not as big as players, nowhere near as big as players. And
Thing is, though, to be fair, the problem with the Griffin scenario is they lost the 3 finals. So I feel like if they won even one of those, the players would have more time for the coaching staff in that sense. Yeah. I get it. One of the reasons why I think the coach gets fired in this case is if the players fire the coach, that's one way of collectively saying, well, it wasn't us. You know, we were all fine. It was just that guy. So give us another chance. So I think if they'd have won even one of those, they might have bought in a bit more.
Don't get that team was 7th out of 8 challenger teams in
Don't
Korea.
keep telling me that when I keep telling you that you claim the best player on the team is Chovy and he wasn't on that team. I've told this 100 times. 100 times.
Oh my God!
It's like an angry dad.
On that team.
What?
Then what's the relevance?
I told you to brush your teeth.
It's like saying SK Telecom before they had Faker. They weren't very good, were they? Would be irrelevant.
No,
right,
my relevancy regarding that was these players were nobodies, and then the coach individually like collected them from challenger.
And who was CV Max before them?
What he was a Wukong.
He was a Rengar
But
one.
he wasn't
Coached by Rengar one string at World Championship.
We'll leave it there. We'll leave
All
it
right.
there.
One analogy that you and I were actually talking about last night was we were talking about the Denver Broncos in football, and I said they had this coach, John Fox, who in 2012 and 2013 was the coach, and they made the AFC Championship and they made the Super Bowl. So you would think, who would fire this coach? But they fired him, and it actually took them firing this guy who took them just up to the brink, but not. His style was too conservative. He wouldn't take enough of a risk for them to actually win a championship. Come back in 2015 and they win the Super Bowl with a different coach who was more aggressive. So I think sometimes it can be a good move, even if on the outside you're like, wow, they keep making the finals to get rid of a coach. Because if you know what your ceiling is with that coach, you're never going to win the championship, right?
This is an angle, though. The reason why I actually like that angle is because I think it perfectly transitions to the Cloud9 Reapered topic. Because the point is this, go back, watch any of our shows I've talked about this topic. I never say Reapered is actually a bad coach. Similarly, if you want to give the analogy, I always give this on the show, I always compared Reapered to Andy Reid.
There's a big staffing on Reapered now, though, because he's got Reapered, Rapid Star, Rainover, and Piglet. Like, that's these 4 people. I don't know if Piglet's coaching, but I know in all the videos.
Is there anyone who's not a washed-up former MIG member? What's going on with this?
Loco, you're next.
No, but my point is this, is that just as in the NFL, Andy Reid himself is a very, very good coach who always has made those AFC Conference Championships. He's on the NFC when he was back in the day with the Eagles. Obviously, he's had loads of regular seasons that are good. But there's a reason why the guy hasn't won the championship. And at the end of the day, if you're the only connecting factor, people are going to look towards you and say, if I'm the team who's just close, maybe I'll make that gamble and get someone else. So the problem
You might be worse, too.
Sure. The problem with Reapered in this scenario is he's been around a long time now in Cloud9. He's been in tons of finals, tons of like semi-finals of LCS. He's now been to Worlds a whole bunch of times. Like, eventually, you have to have the demand that the person wins. They can't stay forever.
How
Is that fair though to Reapered?
Yeah.
Because my argument,
Given the roster.
my argument against that is that he's losing to a Team Liquid team that is spending way more money on their players than C9 is, way more.
At least
And
2x.
so like, is Reapered getting the most bang for the buck out of any coach from a roster? Would be my question.
I would say he is.
Like, we don't know if he had the same budget as Team Liquid for the actual roster, how good would Reaper
Here's why that's
then
whack.
be?
Because every single year, I have all these fans, including Cloud9 fans, tell me that their team... Basically, Cloud9 does the same little BS that Fnatic does, which is once you lose, you go, oh, but we're only this little team that doesn't have enough good players. During the split, when you win in, you go, what are you on about? My players are as good as all the best. I have all the all-pro players.
But you know
just
that's just
shift up
fans.
instantly.
You know that's just
No,
fans.
players themselves believe it. Like you
have to make them believe it. You should definitely make them believe
it.
it.
Do you think the Cloud9 players believe that their lineup's just not good enough and Reapered carries them? No way. They think Licorice is the best top player. Niski's a stud. Svenskera's the MVP. Apparently, Sneaky's still out to play League of Legends. Like, in theory, they've got a good lineup.
Then isn't Reaper doing a great job of giving the confidence to the players and them believing, hey, we're the best players?
You know what?
Wait, no.
I'm going to leave this topic here because I'm just going to say this one thing and I'll let the viewers decide whether this makes sense or not. So think about the arguments they've all made in favour of Reapered. All I'll say is this. They've been what? Or just this year alone, I could probably pick out 10 single games in international or in playoff form where he did a draft that was terrible and his team failed to execute it. So their logic is, this guy's doing an amazing job. At the end of it all, his players can't execute the draft he does, but that isn't his fault. So when someone repeatedly says, Crumbz, like, you don't know much maths, so we're going to go for like a PhD level test today. Oh, you couldn't pass it. It's a shame. Master's level test. Like, mate, I haven't even done my GED yet. Like, let's see, like degree level. It's like, that would be it. Like, eventually you've got to say to the guy, like, you're giving them tests they can't pass here, mate. Like, make it simple.
I'll give one caveat to that. Sometimes the coach's draft limit the players because he doesn't give them the right tool, and vice versa. Players' champion pool and players' proficiency and players' confidence limit the coach's draft in terms of what he can be drafting.
There's only two answers for the outcomes here. Either the coach isn't good enough or the players aren't good enough. You've outlined the players.
I think ultimately the coach has to take the responsibility for the team. So
either way he does anyway.
Exactly, right? So at the end of the day, Reapered is still at the
Sure, you do take responsibility, but there's expectations that are given to every single team, right? If TL barely makes playoff, that's an absolute failure, right? But if like Echo Fox or FlyQuest barely makes playoffs, that's a
TL
success
fails,
for
whose
them.
fault is it? It's still Kane's.
With that roster, yeah. But them failing, the bar is different from all the other teams given the roster. So what is Cloud9's bar for doing well with that roster and failing with that roster?
Domestically, they have more than achieved it, I would say. Making it to finals.
If any,
I mean, not winning it, but it's like, how can you beat Liquid that spends so much money?
Yeah. And the other thing I want to add about Cloud9 and Cloud9 coaching staff, they're getting players like, I mean, now that you mentioned Piglet, Rainover, Rapistar has previous coaching experience before, but for
with SKT.
And EDG.
I'm actually, something's happened in my brain listening to this. So let me just clarify something. Let me check out where I am at the moment. Right? I'm not in Area 51 right now, locked up, being fed Thorazine, and there was no like C9 in the world. It's like presented by AT&T. That was all in my imagination, like the 13th floor or something. So let me just check. Reapered's not a bad coach because he has an enormous coaching staff with all these former champions in Korea, also all legendary Korean figures. None of these people are to blame for whack-ass...
No, nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying.
Wait, no. What I'm saying is Reaper's coaching staff and like Cloud9's crew of coaching staff, it seems like he's training new coaches more so than getting a lot of experienced coaches to bolster him. Like Rainover and Piglet, these are not experienced coaches. They're coaching for the first time. I think what Reaper needs is another coach that has experience that can kind of push him. You know how you mentioned football? like a lot of times when the head coach is very offensive-minded or defensive-minded, what they'll do to bolster that coach is get a defensive coordinator that's really good.
Always do this,
so that's
of
what I
course.
would rather see Cloud9 do than fire Reapered, because I think Reapered does a great job of getting the most out of his coach, the most out of his players, and he's also really charismatic, and he can actually lead a team, and he can be leader of men, and I think that's an incredibly rare quality in North American coaches. In Korea and in a lot of the Eastern team, a lot of times it's just given. The players will respect the coaches just from them being coaches and them being older. In North America, players will challenge you daily on, do you deserve the authority? And every single day, I think Reapered gets the answer, yes, I deserve the authority. And I think that's invaluable to have from a coach in North America.
That's well said.
I hope they keep him, and then I'll be here next year doing the same thing again. And in about 10 years, you can all go, oh, but it's unfair, isn't it? And then just give some other reason. Maybe by then he actually has Mad Life on his staff and go, well, what? Maybe Mad Life didn't do his job. So.
All right. So let's go to Group C, where we have another LCS team.
Oh,
Clutch,
yes.
Who we forgot
Almost
existed earlier in this show because they have done absolutely nothing. As somebody who was working in LCS all season, Crumbz, tell us about Clutch Gaming and their 0-3 performance so far in Group C as we look ahead to their future games.
So I can tell you, my crystal ball tells me that Clutch Gaming's Dignitas logo performance is likely to be exactly the same as the first time Dignitas went to Worlds, which was a 0-6 result.
So, wait, Darius is going to leak strategy to the enemy team and screw over Clutch Gaming?
No. I would just say that they are going to live up to the first search result if you type Dignitas into your web browser there, which is, why are they still named that? I don't know. Anyway.
There's just no hope for this team. Like, seriously, this is just a big boot camp. They need to try to get the most out of this because the way they're losing some of the games is actually so sad. It makes me think that some of the team might not even be held together next year.
The Fnatic game. Oh my God, that Fnatic game.
A lot of them. A lot of these games.
Oh
I mean, the Huni level 5 Vlad teleports bottom to 5 people, dies instantly. Like, something is clearly wrong with this team. And, you know, we're going back to the set play they have, which is the 10-minute Rift Herald. And I'm just sitting here thinking, why not refine the Baron play instead? You know, why not go for the actual play that wins games versus the one that, like, gets you a little bit ahead? And
all you need to do is just be good enough to win an A, and they were just good enough to be the third best team in an A. That's all
exactly.
it took.
So this is just one big lesson. You take the spanking, but it might be such a challenge to beat these teams that there might not even be anything to learn.
Definitely true, and I also think people had this weird expectation that Clutch is going to play spoiler to SKT, RNG, Fnatic. I'm like, no, they just aren't good enough to even play spoiler. So I think the expectation was wrong for a lot of the fans.
If they win one game, they'd still play spoiler.
Yeah, but I don't think they do win that one game. I think it's just so unlikely.
Who could they beat?
Well, that's something worth
Fnatic.
pointing out, by the way, for people who don't know. I know back in the day, one of the reasons why, like at Season 5 Worlds, where famously the Cloud9 team was supposed to finish last and lose all their games, but they did that first week where they went 3-0 with that push strategy. What people used to say as a stat back then was apparently none of the Western teams had ever gone 0-6. Like, that just never happens no matter what group you're in, because the odds you get even one game out of the 6 is like, you've got a decent chance, right? I think this absolutely could be the one. Like, I don't know if it's ever happened in any of the other teams. I can't remember if it did since, but if Clutch could be the first, they will be the first. Like, just look at these teams. Every single team is like a decent favourite over them.
Any other of the playing teams that you put in that team would have ended with the same result. So it's just one stacked group that would have murdered anyone.
So we have had a recurring theme about Fnatic as we look at them, with Reckless playing 0 AD carries so far.
Bottom.
Morgana, yes. What are your thoughts on how Fnatic can come back and maybe take a stab at the quarterfinals right now?
So I think that you're looking at BO1s, you got to switch things up, and a little cheese is not going to hurt your dish here. So globals, I think, is the play that Fnatic needs to do here. Nemesis on Twisted Fate, more Shens, just more things that the enemy is not ready to play against, because everybody expects Reckless to play mages now, and they're not even scary mages. Like, Perks plays scary mages in Syndra and Zoe. He plays Karma Morgana. Nobody cares. If they just busted out something that legitimately made the opponent think about, ooh, how does this champion work in this composition, or do I have to worry about it? They'll do fine.
I'm a little scared for them in terms of their second global being Shen. I don't think they're just going to get TF. When they pick Shen, and people are able to play stuff like Akali top, Vlad
it's not just
top,
Shen TF though. I'm talking GP, I'm talking Nocturne, TF, Shen, even, I mean, I guess DK got nerfed now, but just anything with a really long engage.
Maybe so.
They ran that super global comp against G2 in finals, which was with GP, and I think it was 4 globals that they had. Just take one of those and just keep rinse and repeat. Like one Gangplank ult from any lane to the bottom usually wins your fights.
Kind of similar to what C9 did today, where I think they played Nocturne, Shen, and Galio.
Yeah, that was garbage though. That was not a good.
What makes that bad?
So, I actually thought about this explicitly today. Why is that bad versus the other one? The reason why the Shen, Galio, Nocturne is bad is because there is no damage besides when Nocturne gets in. It's single target, damage, and CC, whereas if you have a Gangplank ultimate, you don't need Shen to go on the Nocturne. The Gangplank ultimate already creates the disruption, the damage, the engage. The Galio is already there as well. So it's too overloaded on the engage and not on the actual damage.
I'm just scared of playing stuff like Shen and Gangplank when there's good Vladimir players in the current group stage. And I think Khan actually is showing up, and he is a scary Vladimir player to play against, to play stuff like Shen, to play stuff like Gangplank, and give him that lane and just let him be. I think for you to be able to run that global comp and really have success, you have to win enough, and there has to be enough space where you can break it open just by adding on that global. And I think rest of the map is strong enough where you get punished so heavily for picking these global champions, and you get pushed in so much during the early phases of the game before globals can really kick in.
You don't want to take GP and take Vlad?
I don't like that matchup when the Vlad player is good.
Impact almost solo killed Naguri. That kill could have gone either way.
That
and like those are
that game,
two of the best.
I mean, that game I actually thought was a bad draft from Liquid because once they lost control, they actually couldn't get back. Like they couldn't control the Baron anymore because they were walking into Orianna Ball and like Vlad ult, right?
But did you not? But specifically Vlad against Gangplank, like.
Did you see the Shy?
You're gonna have to
did
take
you
a
see
skill
Shy
matchup.
versus Impact?
Yeah, you're gonna have to take a skill matchup at some point in this tournament. You're not gonna get away with, oh, we just won the draft flat out. Like the other team is doing something as well.
When you get to globals, when you pick globals, right, then you have weaker 2v2, then you have weaker early game. There are pieces that makes you weaker by having globals, and those parts of the game where you are weaker by having globals, these teams are so good at about punishing. Like Klid, I think, is the best jungler in the tournament, especially when it comes to early game, and it'd be a nightmare for Fnatic to rely on globals, a little bit more weaker laners against SKT. I think they get blown out.
The two players I've found a bit underwhelming from Fnatic is the top side of the map, is the jungle and Bwipo. So it's Broxer and Bwipo, because the whole year, like many other people, I've been very critical of Broxer, but people have told me, like, no, it's fine, you know, he's going to be great. I don't think he's done a whole lot in this group, and I thought this is a group where, even though I said before he's going to have a hard time, there's some really good junglers in this group. At the same time, that's the whole point. You have to match them. You have to make for your team. And then Bwipo, this was actually one of the areas where if Bwipo was the player that he had the rep of being last Worlds, he should dominate. Like, this is a group with troubled top laners. You think about the guy for RNG, I've mentioned this story many times, used to be a really good carry top, but it just hasn't worked very well in RNG, and they stuff everything in the bot lane anyway. So you should have options there. Khan obviously has famously been terrible internationally. He's had his own games where he's run it down. So, like, this could have been a really good chance for Bwipo to be like a massive difference maker. Him and Broxer, I feel like between the two of them, that could have given Fnatic a chance to be a team that's going to the playoffs. Whereas at the moment, they're looking like they're going to get that third spot to me.
I think the matchups in the top lane are just so different now from what Rio was running before, where you could do, I think it was like Victor, Lissandra, and all these mages that are just very straightforward, versus now it's like Klepto Vlad and Jace that could body you out of nowhere, or suddenly a guy runs GP that can crush you, or now you have to think about Renekton Elise and how do you survive that. So it's a lot more to consider in the top lane versus the last year where the action was so more contained into other.
Yeah, but the issue is the team, Fnatic, tell that to Youngbuck. He's the one putting his AD carry on supports and then saying, where is my damage going to come from? Got to be this rookie Nemesis or Bwipo. It's got to be, right?
The problem with Fnatic is I think they're such a well-oiled machine, and they have a great system going. But when you have a really good system, when you have a really good well-oiled machine, you will overachieve and you'll do better than what the individual pieces can bring you. But when that machine gets kind of messed with and the pieces can't function, it affects other parts of the map. Bwipo this year has been mainly about stuff like Aatrox, stuff like Renekton, stuff like Gangplank, where he's left alone, creates his own pressure, and then the 3v3 from mid lane really takes over the map. What happens when that 3v3 from mid lane doesn't take over the map? All the pressure that Bwipo is giving, he just becomes an easy target to gank, and everyone's suffering. When Fnatic doesn't work together as a team and all the pieces aren't clicking together, they look so much worse.
That's every team, though.
No, but it's more true.
It's more true.
It's more true.
I think the top side point with what Bwipo did before and now is actually really relevant.
Yeah, when the mid side is winning, what Bwipo is doing is great because the enemy team doesn't have enough resource to kind of put back into top lane to punish Bwipo. But when they have more than enough resource to punish Bwipo, that system just does not work.
Has TF been banned against Fnatic in all of their games? Because TF also got buffed before the patch, oddly enough.
I don't think so. I'm not recalling that off the top of my head.
I was expecting that to be their most valuable.
That was definitely something that was a hot point of discussion coming into this tournament. I'm just gonna have to look real.
They buffed his attack speed and damage on ADTF, which was Nemesis's pick to almost 3-0.
He was banned in the RNG game. RNG banned TF.
Ooh, technology.
Technology. We're slowly getting through it.
And if TF is up, I'd imagine they play it.
Clutch banned him. You might be right. I think he was actually banned all 3 games. SKT also banned it. Yes,
wow.
so it's been banned all 3 games.
Okay, so I guess they're not going to get that.
Yeah.
Do you think that's
then Shen? I think Shen would be enough.
To contrast Fnatic with Cloud9, then, do you think the Fnatic drafts have been have they inhibited their abilities at this tournament? Like, could they have drafted a little bit more standard and it would have been better for them? What do you think?
I mean, I'm looking at the one against SKT. I think this is fine. You have meta picks everywhere. It all makes sense. You have easy ways to execute your composition. I'm not the expert in how do you pull off Garen Yumi.
True.
But they've done this before.
Like,
all these picks, they've ran it. Nothing's new here. So I really think it's so much about confidence. And it felt like the teams took a big shaking with the scrims, with the Asian teams coming over because they were scrimming during play-ins, all happy games, having a good time, and suddenly Griffin and SKT show up, you're scrimming against them, and now you have 2 days to figure out if everything you did in 1 month worked. So,
well, they probably weren't scrimming SKT because they're in their group, but yes.
Yeah.
I'll also add as well, like, I already personally thought it was going to be questionable whether Fnatic came second or third in this group, but I would have given them a chance to come second. I have to say the big shake-up in this group for me is RNG. RNG's overperformed
looking really good.
They've looked really good in all the games pretty much.
My thing, I think Uzi can be, if Uzi plays better, RNG comes out first. Because Uzi is not playing well and RNG still looks good.
I love the little adjustments they made in the first game where they were so slow about moving around the map, playing around Herald. They've been really good about putting their bot lane where they need to be and not just trying to maximize farm. They've adapted in their group. Lang X really improved this play. His last 2 games have been so much better than his first. So yeah,
fighting's all been good. It looks pretty legit in the fights, I think.
I can't wait for RNG SKT matchup, and I hope we get a tiebreaker. I just want extra games of RNG versus SKT.
I mean, yeah, that's what we want from groups, is many good games between the good teams.
If only there was a format that would give us this. Damn it. Too bad no one in esports has ever invented one. Well, Riot surely will invent a good format at some point in time and then claim they made it. Anyway, let's talk about SKT, because they are the presumptive favorite as the undefeated team in Group C right now. Definitely a possibility considering how the first matchup went between SKT and Royal, even though I think SKT just played that badly. They could have stomped that game had they spread the pressure a bit more. But that said, still that possibility. RNG upsets them, or Fnatic maybe even steals a win, and then we end up in a tiebreaker.
And they have a new coach on stage, Zifa, instead of Coma. Which, are you familiar with Loco? Zepha?
Yeah.
He used to be a player.
We used to be on Nudge
used
and
to
Shield
play
together.
With...
He replaced me. So yes, I do know.
So who knows how good he was? So who even knows?
So you got a little chip on your shoulder here.
No, I have nothing against him.
If it makes you feel better, Loco, he was really bad.
Okay, I know. Gorilla told me he liked me better. He didn't say I was better, but he told me he liked me better.
Nah, he wasn't bad. He was more just like a sneaky player.
Duncan, let me have this. Shut up. Let me have this. Let me have this.
Okay, but then in team fights, he would do his job, you know.
Loco wants to believe that he was replaced, that someone else thought that Zepha was better than him. For whatever reason, I don't understand that he would be happy that Zephyr was bad.
It's all right.
If anything, you should be like, Zephyr was fantastic.
Exactly,
I totally understand why Zephyr replaced me. I mean, I was good, but
was like Aaron
Zephyr
Rodgers
It was a corrupted decision. It was a corrupt
Yeah, it's
decision.
perfectly fine.
And you were the more likable person. That's why it's like you are the friend.
Luckily, though,
well, and he played
Loco
with
did-
Kane, who's the coach for TL. Sorry,
Well, what Loco did was he actually suckered Gorilla into believing that he was past all that and he didn't hold a grudge. And then he trapped Gorilla in the Misfits prison for 1 year and destroyed his career.
Made sure he
Now
was
no one
paid.
will ever hear the name Gorilla ever again.
Like praying gorilla.
I did not trap him. Oh my God, Misfits asked me to. I'm not going to go into this.
So where is he now? What's going on in Gorilla's life? Can he do anything?
He's chilling in Korea. He's doing guest appearance on the LCK broadcast for Worlds.
So you forced an early retirement out of
I did
him.
not
He's now
force
turning
any-
into
To be fair to Gorilla,
He'll be on Reapered's coaching
yeah,
staff.
Gorilla probably is going to be a very good coach. Knowing Gorilla, like he definitely has a mind for the game and a very, I think, calm and calculated demeanor. I can see him being a good coach in the future. Let's talk about Group D, because this one's been pretty weird.
Yeah.
We have 3 2-1 teams. This group, if anything is wide open, it's this one.
Team Liquid should have lost against AHQ. And
Yes.
I watched that, and I know some people gave a lot of credit to Impact, but I'm going to not give any credit to Team Liquid. I'm going to give all the credit over to the AD from AHQ because I think that he threw that game hard. 2 times. You remember that fight in Red Buff? Decides to flash over a wall and die instantly when his team is taking the fight, and then the other one, he's trying to, instead of taking down the tank, when you are a Kaisa that murders tanks, you flash into double lift and die into his
Well,
feathers.
and even with that, by the way, even with those mistakes, HQ still could have won if they didn't get that Baron stolen, right?
And the Barons, I almost forgot that happened too, because they didn't clear the control ward. Like, how on earth do you do a Baron with an enemy having the control ward in front of you and no one autos that? Not every auto needs to go to the Baron.
I'm actually amazed, even in general, though, at Worlds, some of the times I've seen those Kaisa misplays where they just go instantly in. Like, they don't even wait for the fight to start by the time. They just go in. And listen, yes, you know the first kill is guaranteed, but the point is at that point, they just collapse on you.
vein
If you
spotting on
it's
crack.
it is ridiculous, isn't it? It's like they can't. It's like you've given an AD carry the equivalent of the Lee Sin Q. It's like, should I press? I know I shouldn't, but I want to. And then you press it, and then it's only at that moment you regret, isn't it? It's only when you depress that button that the weight of it hits you. But then you haven't got any time to regret it because you've got to now play and get outplayed. So I'm trying to get my head kicked in, isn't it?
Wait a minute.
At least with Lisa and Q, during the time you're flying, you have time to regret. With Kaisa, you just show up there and you're like, oh my God, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
A defeat. I think Team Liquid is the final hope here, obviously, for North America, but it's not very promising to see that the team that spent the most is not capable of being clean. Like Team Liquid, I think if they play their best game, it's still like a dish that you just washed and there's just a little bit there that the dishwasher didn't get off. It could have been a bit cleaner, and it's just sad because they need to get to that level if they want to progress farther into the bracket stage.
Do you not think they'll make it out?
I think they have a chance, but I'm not convinced with that game against AHQ. I think that this team could easily flop. Like, there's no confidence in, no signs say you should put all your money in the Team Liquid basket because week 1 looked shaky. Internationally, they never are perfectly clean. Why would it happen now?
The thing is, to me, though, the HQ game is the outlier. Like, that's the one game I've seen them look really bad in. Like, aside from that, they never, like, dominate the other opponent. That's just not the style of team they are. But they usually look pretty solid to me internationally.
I think double lift and impact are the 2 things in that team that are looking really good right now. Double lift, I'd say, definitely has been the best marksman at the tournament.
But
Yeah. I think Double has been crushing it.
Better than Uzi.
Yeah,
Uzi has had a couple of
You
off
kidding me?
games.
We just saw a replay of Uzi getting bobbed by his. Watch how many times Double Lift actually dodges shit with his Zaya ultimate every time.
Wait, did you see Double in that Damwon game where he was ulting into the Veigar cage?
It's not like the bar is very high, okay? But I'm saying in this bar, Double Lift, I would put him
hasn't
at the
been
top.
much of an AD tournament, has it? To be
Yeah, and also that same game that you're talking about, yes, he did have some problems. He also was incredibly impactful in some of those late game team fights versus Damwon. I think he got like a quadra to end the game, and yeah, that's just him last hitting. But at the same time, he had some mispositions, but he also had some very good positioning in that same game.
Oh, by the way, if we want to talk about ADCs and we're bringing up things that people remember, How come everyone before this tournament, like Perks was in everyone's top 5, like he's going to dominate the tournament? Where's that guy?
I think
He's just an
wouldn't put him
okay
there?
player.
I think today was a little
I thought
bit.
he was mad overrated.
I think today Perks' performance wasn't that great, but his team fell around him, so it's hard to judge. But I think Perks and Uzi.
If you need your team to perform to a certain level to enable you are by definition not a superstar player.
I mean, he's
you are by
overval-
that is the AD carry role right now, though.
That's the
But
problem,
the
yeah.
overvalue of Perks is just from him shifting the meta. Like,
Sure,
that has
agreed.
to be it, right? You
Yeah,
have to. He's a player to watch because he's the only one that brought this up, and now a lot of people are copying it.
I mean, I could make an argument right now that at this tournament so far, both in the role of ADC and even on non-ADC champions, Viper's been better from Griffin. I can make that argument.
I actually would put Teddy in there also.
Yeah, Teddy's
not a
been
bad
playing
one.
some Yasuo, like.
I'm not saying like Perks has been an incredible stand-up, but
I'm
it
just
was-
saying he's been a bit invisible for someone who was so highly touted coming into the tournament, you know.
I was just surprised to hear Crumbz say Doublelift was his best marksman player of the tournament.
I think the key thing is he clarified it later. He just doesn't think that.
Yeah,
ADC's
I don't
been
think
that
there's
impactful.
any great
Also,
AD at the moment.
just to point this out, you know, people have said Nuclear pretty terrible.
He's been pretty bad.
So his competition in this group, Jackie Love is basically it.
Guy, pretty bad.
Yeah, so like,
You know.
I mean, two-thirds of the games he's played
Yeah.
gets bad ADCs. Just,
Yeah, we're
you know, you
halfway
gotta-
through, right? We have 50% of the knowledge right now.
And Jackie Love hasn't played particularly well either. He was quite highly touted. Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think ADC's been that great a role for this tournament.
Well, but my point is, in this group in particular, I think it's easier for Doublelift to potentially look good, but we'll see if he can make it out
It's
of the
also
group.
significant as well, because to be fair, despite all of Team Liquid's success this year, this has been one of the quietest years of Doublelift's career. I've seen.
And there's actually one big thing from Team Liquid that I'm looking at is that only Xmithy's contract is up at the end of this year. And he is the second most winningest player in North America. If Team Liquid doesn't get out of groups or doesn't do well, I fully see somebody making a run for those players and breaking this team up. Like, I don't think Team Liquid lasts another year unless a lot of money is shelled out. If
And then finally, Dardoch comes back to Team Liquid.
Lokodoko is reunited.
He joins the coaching staff of Reapered because obviously everything they do is brilliant over there, and probably all goes awesome. Make another documentary, putting the pieces back together.
listening to Loko.
Yeah, exactly.
With what Crumbz said, Xmithy's contract's up at the end of the year, and he would be like the piece. But for Team Liquid, I feel like they can keep anyone they want to. Who would want to leave TL? Long as they have Doublelift, like who would want to leave TL?
I'd even go the other way as well and say people can make as much fun of the LCS league as they want, but there's a lot of junglers. If they heard you're going to keep the other 4 and I just get to join Smithy's spot, I could see some big name European junglers wanting that. Like that's an awesome spot to ride into.
They get an import spot opened up. Only Core
Yankos
JJ would be
to
an
TL.
import.
And
Never would
remember-
happen.
I don't know whether you'd go this route because obviously it's the whole Korean angle, but because you've got Core JJ, the option of getting Koreans is open as well.
Not just Core JJ, they have Kane and Dodo on their coaching staff. So they're.
But I mean, in the game,
Maybe
you could even
a
shot
full
call for
Korean
that guy, you know.
import.
No, so they'd be-
slowly but surely.
They'd be so ready to take on a Korean if they do need to. But I'm not gonna.
Getting Canyon from Dan One Gaming.
I'm not going to get
Bring him
ahead
in.
of myself. I dissed on Xmithy before coming into the tournament because he didn't look that great in finals, and I knew the jungle matchups in this tournament was going to be incredibly important. He stepped up, and he was a lot of the reason why TL is 2-1 and not 1-2 in the game, or in the group.
One of the few junglers playing Jarvan as well, prioritizing.
He's been doing it well.
Just so much easier to execute than Lee Sin. Like, buy stone, play press art. I did it, guys. My job is done. You're welcome for the quadra kill Doublelift.
We see so much Galio support being played and also Galio mid. I would love it if people paired it with Jarvan a little bit more. That was the old OP duo, and especially when you nerf Galio's ability to engage with flash taunt, then the Galio ulting on top of Jarvan is such a nice way to make an entrance into the fight.
Yeah, and he has a stone plate itemization. Like, it's perfect for what teams are running in their carries right now, but they just are not prioritizing the pick.
Because you're a jungler, you would probably know better than me.
I can tell you why I think people are not playing Jarvan.
Isn't your early game matchup a little bit problematic when you're running into Jarvan versus Elise, Jarvan versus Lisa, and Jarvan versus Kiana, Jarvan versus Gragas?
Yeah, so that's part of it, but you obviously mitigate it with just way more ganks, and you can get ahead of it too. Like, it's a skill matchup in those cases, but I think the problem is you're not finding enough carries that have low mobility to play Jarvan against.
Yeah.
Like, I really think that's just it, because no one's running Orianna Syndra every single game. You have mobility everywhere, invisibility everywhere, dashes, invulnerabilities. Just
yes, mobility creep.
Not enough to Jarvan hop on you and then get you, and then you have a guaranteed kill. Everybody just hops out of it.
That's such a good point, because when Jarvan was popular, another extremely popular champion in the meta was Sivir. When Sivir's being played, Jarvan's so excellent, because Sivir, her whole thing is, I'm very mobile, I can spell shield stuff. Well, have fun spell shielding Cataclysm. You block my damage, but you're still getting trapped.
Yeah.
Do you actually have Team Liquid getting out of the group?
So,
I forgot what we did.
Yeah, I have TL at my number 1.
Wow.
I still kept number 1, right? Yeah, okay.
I'm not very confident in it, but one thing I will say for Team Liquid, they're the most well-balanced team in the group. For IG, they have a black hole in jungle and support. For Damwon, they have a black hole down in bot lane. TL, their weak point was Xmithie, but he's been stepping up, and I fully expect Jensen to step up a little bit more. So they will be very well balanced. They're not going to be a team that you can blow out by going to this one lane over and over again.
For me, that's the big X factor for Team Liquid is Jensen, because like if you look at the players in their team, they don't even always need him to do that well to win the game. They can function without him. But if you're looking at players, like there are some superstar names in this group, the Shy, Rookie, obviously Naguri, Showmaker. These are big time players. And I have to say, Jensen actually, for me, holds up that European tradition where you can be as good as the Asian player at the opposition. Like, this guy can absolutely pop off in one best of one and be the best player in the server. So in a world where that can happen against these teams where they are going to be heavily carried by those individual players, I think that's the big decision maker for me with Team Liquid. They could go out third here, they could win the group.
So what do you make out of the Orianna game that he had?
Ugh.
That wasn't that great, I have to say. But he's had some other good games that were good.
So what are your predictions for Group C and Group D, Crumbz?
Group C, I have SKT and RNG. I don't think the Fnatic is actually going to be able to do it quickly enough, just because I am, look at this, flashing, Prophet Crumbz, there it is. And so for Group D, I have not decided.
Undecided. Okay. So I think I took IG, Liquid, Damwon, AHQ in that order.
What are the factors that are keeping you on the fence on whichever matchups, the one at the moment you're kind of on the fence? Who are you on the fence about making it? Like, is there one that's a clear number one?
The thing that's always on the fence is that the relevance of the previous matches played in Worlds always matters. So the teams are watching each other play and taking that into account. And so I'm thinking, what's the prep going to be like for the teams in week 2? I don't want to think about a week 2 and a curse, more of what do the Korean teams and Asian teams usually do when week 2 happens, when they lose a few games and then they adapt? They typically are a lot better in the second weeks, whereas North America, I don't know what to expect out of a second week. And I've seen individual mistakes plague Team Liquid all year long. So I think that if they lose, it could be down to mechanical errors that are just so large that people just pile on top of each other and now you've lost the game. And seeing the Jensen individual misplays or the lack of faith in Nick Smithy at the start of the tournament is because of those individual mistakes that they have made all split. So it's hard for me to go on Team Liquid because the mechanical talent on IG and Damwon is so high that they could easily beat Team Liquid if it's only about that.
Fair enough.
What do you think about the weak points on Damwon and IG? I think they stand out so much.
I mean, it's relative to their opponents most of the time. Right? Are they going to be punished for them in the first place? And Team Liquid is not doing that every single time. So I think that these weak points aren't as, they're not running you the game down if it's not punished by the other team. They're not crazy unforced errors.
I think Leon, the jungler, he's so timid, and jungle role is...
It's champion dependent, though. It's so champion and matchup. If you have good lanes and a solid jungler, they just get in there.
You always have good lanes. You're playing with Rookie and the Shy. He always has good lanes, and he still can't manage to execute. He's given opportunities, and he can't pull the trigger. So I think he is a huge problem that prevents IG from being a contender.
The funny thing is, even though obviously it was IG that beat Team Liquid, I have to say of the two teams, if I'm Team Liquid, I'm a bit more scared actually of Damwon. Like, first of all, if they ever can get a really good matchup for Naguri and he ever gets rolling, it didn't happen in the other game, but that would be very, very interesting to see. And then the second component is, IG has no jungler. The jungler for Damwon is a monster. Like, that guy, when he's dialed in, can be very, very good, and he can be super aggro with his ganks as well. So, like, Smithy has to get all the veteran wiles out to survive.
That's why I think these roles, these weaknesses, you can mitigate them with matchups that are just a little easier. Pick him Jarvan. Don't give him Lee Sin. He's not doing anything. give him Jarvan, have him run it down a few times. He's still useful to you. That's what you need. Like a lot of these teams are picking champions like Kayle because they're still useful even if they run it down. Take the same approach with your weak players instead of trying to help them go from shitty to average. Just let them do something and focus on the best guys doing even more.
Okay, so you don't have a prediction for Group D. You're not even going to put yourself out there?
No, all right, I'll put myself out. No,
all right.
Come on.
Nail it down.
He's going to go down one IG.
Down one TL,
Okay.
above IG.
Above IG. That's
All right.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Well, we're going to do calls next. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for
Again,
having me.
Crumbz, we've done this a lot here on the Nines.
I got my shoes. I don't know if you guys saw these. Look at these Pumas are crazy.
Yeah, he's really good at shilling too. He's learned. So, how can people find you right now? What are you up to during the off season?
Whew, it's been a wild.
You've been VOD reviewing?
Yeah, so we're doing some VOD reviews. Marks and Meteos are doing those. I think it's on the LOL Esports channel. And things that I'm doing in the off season, well, unfortunately, all of them will happen at the end of the year that I can say. So I just can't tell you what I'm doing right now. But I'm having a good time.
Good. Well, they can find you at Profit.
At Profit Crumbz, yes, where you can find me. At Profit Crumbz is my Twitter, and that's really it.
All right. We're going to take.
May the force be with you.
Yes, may the force be with you. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be talking to plebs when we come back. Hooray. Welcome back to the Nines Summoning Insight, presented by AT&T. I'm Monte Cristo, your host. And now we're going to talk to some plebs, our least favorite part of the show. I appreciated the slow zoom onto my face during that. That was good.
It felt like we were going to some sort of arts and crafts thing. It's like la 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 la. Now we go over quite a segment. Local with the leaves, and he's out in the garden. La, 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 la. Anyway, let's get some calls going.
All right. Let's get straight into the plebs. We have Wooshju, who is here. Hello. Please ask your question immediately.
Hello. I just want to ask this question mostly to Loco because he's the one saying it the most. But don't you think you're underrating down one's bot lane too much? Because all year they've been laning against SKTs, Griffins, Casey's. They went 5 games against Staff bot lane. And the narrative going to Worlds isn't that the bot lane is losing them games. It's just that the bot lane's the weakest. Like, a lot of people even rated them like top 4 going to Worlds.
Called out. What do you think?
Top 4 for what? Like,
For Worlds, he said.
oh, Down One Gaming?
Yes.
I think Down One Gaming has incredibly good solo laners, and it'd be a lie to say like Canyon is like an absolute top tier jungler, but he's definitely up there. So when your top side of the map is that strong, what's preventing you from being one of the favorites? What's preventing you from being one of the contenders? Like, so many people have Nuguri and Showmaker all the way up there.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure Nuguri, Showmaker, and Canyon, almost all 3 of them were on everyone's top 20 list. If you have 3 of your 5 players on top 20 list, why aren't you
to be fair,
one of the favorites?
Some people didn't even have 3 G2 players, so I'll say that is actually pretty significant that people had 3 Down One players, yeah.
If those players are so good and your team's still kind of underrated, and they went to Game 5 versus Kingzone, with Kingzone having pretty weak solo lane,
Sure.
even in Kingzone's bot lane being exceptional, then something has to be bad, right? Like, one part of the team has to be underperforming, and it's obviously the bot lane. And when you watch players like Nuclear play, even when he gets a lot of gold, even when he's especially fed on Kai'Sa, he just doesn't output as much as the other AD carries. The problem with AD carries is getting to a fed state. Once you get to that fed state, you should be able to take over the game. They have problems with both, like getting fed and also doing things when getting fed. As for the support, I think he's exceptional on All-Star, but beyond that, he's just not that special. So I don't think it's that false of me to say Down One has a bad bot lane.
Well, the funny thing is, I actually asked this of LS. I noticed he didn't really have much of an answer, unfortunately, because I know he's a big believer that if you can get to the top of Korean solo queue, it shows like some like latent talent that you have that can be developed. And the weird thing is, I've noticed this the whole year. Anytime you look at Korean solo queue, the support, Beryl, is always really high up. His accounts are always there. But I have to say, anytime I ever watched him in competitive, he just looked okay to me. He never looked like some standout super duper support.
He's had good games, but he hasn't been very consistent.
Also, if he's really good at champions like Alistar in solo queue, hard engaging in solo queue and playing hard engaged champions is a great way to win solo queue games because at least you can force your team to be decisive if you don't have a lot of coordination.
Basically, that was actually, I remember now, LS's like answer. His answer basically was that he thinks support is like super OP in solo queue at the moment. So he just thinks any really good support should be able to climb.
Got it. Okay. All right.
I will just say for that one, by the way, just because, again, just from doing shows, I have a good sense for like where there's disconnect. I would just say the disconnect there, where you might not have gotten the answer you were fully interested in from Loco, is when you said that interesting detail at the end, like some people had them top 4 rated. Like, if you could remember where, that could have been really interesting. Because the problem with that is I'm not sure what you're referring to. I haven't seen them write it down. So I can't actually even address that myself. Like, I never saw that anywhere. That seems unusual to me. Someone I'm top 4.
I also
bot lane, surely not.
I also do think people overrated them going into the tournament.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question from Pope Cheetos the 14th. Your Holiness, what's your question?
Hey, so my question is, there are so many different franchise leagues across the world, and in those, there's going to be top teams and there's going to be bottom teams. There's going to be the most popular ones. So my question is, if there was a bottom team with no winning history, could they ever become more popular than a top team through things such as social media outreach?
Easy. I think they showed that the amount of fan support for 100 Thief, Riot released a graphic thing about like the icons that were bought. 100 Thief were way up there. And they weren't a team that was winning very much. So even though
they did win a lot their first year, to be fair.
They did win in the first year.
So I'm just saying, like, yes, they didn't do great this year, but they did really well their first year, especially considering they were entering the league for the first time with like probably being there in new management. And so they may have accrued many fans due to their success. But part of it is they have good branding, and then, carried through those fans through a worse year.
I mean, there's teams that do well, and then they just disappear completely. I mean, on the opposite end, we can talk about Splyce. Like, Splyce has had more results than 100 Thief, But I'm pretty sure if he wanted to bet, I would bet that 100 Thieves has more fans overall than Splyce does.
Without just nitpicking, I will say the problem with the 100 Thieves example is that they were a successful Call of Duty brand before. And I can tell you from Counter-Strike, I never thought there would be overlap in the games. But when people like Optic and FaZe came into Counter-Strike, they had a similar phenomenon. They instantly got like loads of flares on Reddit.
I remember
fans.
FaZe's first CSGO major, they sold like way more stickers
and they
than
had a
anyone
bad
else.
team at the
And they had
time.
a bad
That team. Didn't even make top 8.
100 Thieves as a brand didn't exist until LCS started. Truly, no, because the brand was
Yeah,
Nadeshot.
but they had Nadeshot.
Yeah, so Nadeshot's like the only carryover. no?
Sure. There's a lot of fans follow him, though, you know.
What was this guy's core question so we can try to answer
No,
it?
the question was just like, could you make a team without, he said, without a winning record. So basically his idea is, can you get popularity without the results? Now, the problem with that example there is like, first of all, 100 Thieves did have some success. I think basically, I'll rephrase it to how I think he's trying to make the point. I think his premise would go like this. Let's say I took the Echo Fox lineup now and I clean the decks completely and I start with a brand new lineup of players, but I make the lineup of players, like I'll pick players that could be around their level, Froggen, and I go with like I have to pick some other big names from the past, you know, like names that people are fans of, but I put 3 or 4 big favourites on there. And even if they don't win, let's say they're a 50% win rate team, but they're like just good enough, like if they lose every game, I'm guessing no one's going to cheer for them, no matter who they are. They have to be just good enough to win that you could be a fan of them, and then they've got the big names to be a fan of. Like, do you think that, for example, could exceed a big name team? Could it ever exceed a Fnatic or a Cloud9?
No. I think you can get fan base without winning, but you're capped. Unless like you're winning championships, unless you're going to Worlds, unless you're one of the teams people talk about at the end of the season, you're capped in where your fan base and where your popularity can take you.
I even think they're connected, because I would personally say this. I think it's almost a cheat to even frame it like I did there, because let's face it, why are people a fan of Froggen now? It's not because he has the best personality in the whole league. It's he used to be a brilliant player who used to win. Most players that get the really big name, you have to have had the success at some point anyway. So I think it's half and half.
Yeah, it is half and half. That said, most branding in esports is like super terrible. So, you know, even when we see a team like 100 Thieves come in that I'm not going to say has great branding, but at least has good branding, especially compared to terrible esports branding. Because a lot of the problem I find in esports is that the branding for many of the teams was decided many years ago when esports was much smaller for reasons that don't really exist anymore. Like TSM is a great example. They're literally named after a guide website, and the purpose of the team was to promote the guide website because the esports scene hadn't grown that much yet. So now they're just this random 3-letter acronym that has nothing to do with anything any longer because they're no longer a promotion for the site. So it's like we're in this like meta disconnected reality. So there's a lot of teams that had this branding that doesn't make sense anymore. So it's hard. I think that in general, if you see a good brand coming in, it's a lot easier to get fans because if you present an identity, most teams in esports don't have distinct identities right now.
Yeah, so you need to be able to describe teams in like 3 words. Like words have to come to you instantly. G2, villains, Cloud9, memers. Unless like you have that kind of association or an identity, then you're really weak in terms of that. Like people need to be able to vibe with you right away.
So I do think it's easier in esports to be an absolute terrible team and have fans than it would be in traditional sports, simply because the brands are weak and for the most part we don't have localization driving like fan bases from cities or countries. Anyway, let's get on to the next question. 94, hello, what's up?
Hello. Hi, so my question was regarding how Korean teams have performed this Worlds. So last Worlds, they have everyone had said that they had underperformed greatly, and the farthest that a Korean team went was KT Rolster, who went to, and most people attributed that to a bad read of the meta, which is due to, and also the reduction of vision. So I wanted to, so this year, Korean teams have been doing much better, even though it's kind of early in the tournament. So I wanted to know if you think this is because of the players and the teams, or able to adapt better to the meta.
So I obviously can't answer this one because I wasn't doing much with League last year, but what do you guys think?
I mean, the best way to do it's probably like he alluded to at the end there, which is don't make it the region and big broad strokes. It's actually probably more interesting to talk about the specific teams and why it's different this time. Because one of the problems I had with last year's lineups was, so you had the Afrika team, Right, I can just tell you, I know no Cloud9 or NA fan wants to hear this, but the series they played against Cloud9 in the quarterfinals, I have never seen a Freaka play like that ever with that team. They were a much, much better squad. Like, Kuro used to hold up way better. He was one of the MVP candidates at the time. So I think for that one, I would just guess some of their players had obviously never been on a world stage, had never been that deep. I would guess there was some sort of nerves element or something happened there because, like I say, it's not that they were up and down and they just had a bad game. They played in a way I've never seen them play when they got 3-0'd. Then you look at the other squad. Do you want to jump on that one?
Sure. Well, the thing is, the old school Korean way of playing that this guy was describing, right? Those way of playing really resides with teams like KT, Gen.G, and SKT. SKT switched up their playstyle a lot. As for Damwon Gaming and Griffin, they weren't teams until this year. So they weren't LCK teams until this year. So the old Korean style teams stayed in Korea, and the new style of Korean teams came, and SKT adapted.
I'll also throw in as well, like one of the problems I always had last year is the KT angle, because by Worlds, KT was a very good team. They were the champions. They actually took IG to 5 games and could have gone further and won Worlds. But the big problem I had with their team was they stacked all the talent in that team. Like, as a result, you had all these star players, Smeb, all this, and like, they should have been in 2 or 3 different teams, as they basically are now. So that also meant that all your eggs were in the KT basket. So then when they go out, well, now how are those teams supposed to have like some super duper mega player? They're not, are they? So and
also Faker wasn't there.
Yes, and then unfortunately Gen.G qualified. So like, that basically they weren't a good team. They qualified out of nowhere, and then unlike the last year, they didn't then go and do something. They just flopped completely. So I would just say this. I think that's one of the least. I already would have said this before we even went to Worlds. That was one of the least impressive groups of teams that Korea ever sent. Like, I didn't know anyone who was saying like Afrika was going to win Worlds. Like, people thought KT could, and even then they weren't everyone's number one favorite. A lot of people had RNG. So I'll just say, as a crop, that was one of the weaker groups they sent. They still had 2 teams make top 8, and one of them pushed the eventual champions to 5 games. So I actually always thought that whole angle of like Korea as a region is done. It's like whoa, let's calm that right down. You know, like, yeah, maybe some of these teams need to reformulate as they indeed did. Whereas this year, much better teams, I think.
Small correction, Griffin was a team last year, but they just didn't make Worlds. I realized when you talked about Gen.G, what if they lost to Gen.G?
I spared you on that one.
Yeah, but
all right.
I mean,
Ed Mercy.
It's new. They're still the new generation of Korean, and the old generation of Korean teams still stay behind.
Yeah, your point still stands.
You can even add into that if you want. That's another factor, is that at the end of last year, everyone in the world, I know they lost to Afrika, so they're going to say, well, technically they aren't foreign. No, everyone in the world would have said, if you asked them who are the top 3 Korean teams, they would all have said Griffin. But the problem is, because Griffin didn't play the spring, they only had that shot in the summer. They needed to win the summer split. They needed to go through the gauntlet.
Yeah, the point system.
So as a result, I actually think if they'd have played the whole year, that would have taken care of itself. You know, we wouldn't have had maybe a Gen.G. I don't know who it could have been, you know.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Scenario.
STL Slayer 24. What's your question for us?
Hi. So even though TSM is bad right now, they still have one of the best brand recognitions in League of Legends, and you can see that by the fact that every single day at Worlds, there's TSM chants in the crowd.
All right, we'll talk about that.
I'm not sure I agree with the premise. Like,
yeah, I don't agree with the premise.
On the other part, like, I could agree with them. Like, obviously in League, they still have quite a vibrant brand, blah, blah. The problem with that is, though, like, I never thought, like, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe you guys can tell me. I'm sometimes off with meme stuff. I always thought that even people doing the whole TSM chant is, like, ironic.
It's ironic,
they're not
clearly.
even fans of TSM. I've heard them do it in LEC before. Like, I don't think those are really TSM fans. I think part of that's, it's like cheering for the wards being killed.
What?
People doing that now don't even know what that refers to.
Right.
They just do it because everyone does it, don't they?
It's also, I think that, I think there's several factors at play here. So part of what I do in esports is branding things as part of what my new consultancy firm is based off of. And when I look at TSM, the fundamental problem that I see is that the brand was crafted around winning. Again, their name is a 3-letter acronym. It's not really cool. Their logo is super terrible.
But it's very chantable.
It's very chantable, but okay, that's something going for them. But the problem is that their entire brand was predicated on them winning. And now that they have started losing, what is TSM's identity? Literally, like, tell me what TSM is.
It's Bjergfinn.
Okay, but it's a player, not like, what is the brand?
No, they don't have an identity.
Exactly, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So I think right now, especially, so first off, I think the TSM chanting is obviously ironic. Yeah. Like, the European fans are fans of TSM. Also, I think honestly, it's salt in the wound, right? They're doing it to needle TSM fans because frankly, making fun of TSM fans is incredibly fun.
Basically, the TSM chant within the context of North American esports has replaced what to everyone else in the world is the really obnoxious USA chant.
Yes,
in
it is the same
traditional
chant.
sport. It's basically the same concept. Yeah, that's the premise, you know. Because I also thought that's half of why people even do that. It's not always just some super patriot. Even part of that's just like, let's just F with the other team, let's troll them a bit and just USA. Like, obviously it's going to get to them and annoy them, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a good tactic.
I mean, I don't think TSM has a great brand identity, but they do have a lot of brand recognition due to the historic things that they were able to achieve, and people still talking about it.
Sure, but literally, let me ask you a different question.
Okay.
I think we've seen, you know, sure, last year not making Worlds is one thing, you know, not having necessarily a great performance, but now we're on 2 years in a row, and you know what? We actually haven't talked very much compared to how much we used to talk about TSM on this show and making fun of them. Like, for the most part, I just forget they exist now. And the real question is, what happens in the future? Like, what if they don't make Worlds next year? Do you think anybody's going to be chanting TSM next year?
The real problem, as you've noticed, is it doesn't matter what the scenario is, local will always find a way to defend TSM. Like, here's the thing, I would have thought you'd want to replace their owner the way you're always in favour of Reggie's side. That was straight fire. You didn't even get that, did you? Straight fire. Look that up. That was amazing.
That is great. That is great.
Straight fire. Anyway, keep going. It's all right.
I don't
disagree. Is this the year you're going to give up on TSM?
Well, I don't think I'll ever give up on TSM.
God. Okay.
Oh, so
this is the hill he wants to die on.
Can we make a cold opening where it's like Brokeback Mountain recreated, like, I can't give you up, Reggie.
Like how I'll always be grateful towards you guys for helping me out.
Okay.
I'll always be grateful towards Andy. So I won't give up on TSM.
No. It's not about you giving up. I just think, like, their cachet, their power within the scene has already started to diminish.
Yeah.
And I think what would be smart of them is to really think about, like, what the brand values are in the future, because that's something that they really, 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 really need to work on.
They hit up your consulting company?
No, you know what? Andy, I'd be happy to work with you. I think make TSM great again. That's what I say.
As he said, the biggest problem is there was no fallback. There was no what's our perspective while we're not winning. Like, for example, I mean, for obvious reasons, teams like Cloud9 have been able to craft during the era they didn't win, still have like an interesting vibe, still keep a similar fan base, but evolve the fan base.
Yes.
The big problem TSM has
content beyond their just team.
Sure. I would actually say the biggest flaw TSM has overall is exactly that. To this day, not only is their brand no longer about winning because they don't win, but it still is part of the brand, though, and that's the problem.
Yes.
So they remind
That's why
me,
it's funny.
At the moment, right now, the team they remind me of is the New York Knicks. Because the bizarre thing is, fans of the New York...
good.
Do not compare Andy to Dolan. Do not compare Andy to Dolan.
Not for that reason.
Actually,
primarily because...
Pretty accurate.
Do not compare Melo to Bjergsen.
Primarily because... I will finish this sentence 100% or you will all be dead. So... At the end, what I was going to say was, the main problem is fans of the New York Knicks aren't like super fans of the Knicks. Like, you've noticed they don't have that much support. But it's because they're all waiting, like, right, I'll only get on board again when they win, basically. And everyone's waiting for that. And so even though the Knicks as a basketball org haven't been champions for literally 30 years at this point in time, there's still the perception that they should only ever be winning.
But it's
they
also...
haven't crafted a cool, sports vibe outside of that, have they?
I think it goes even deeper, too, because, like TSM, no one even knows what a Knickerbocker is anymore. So you're sort of, like, divorced...
What is a Knickerbocker?
Exactly. I don't know. But see, like, many people don't know that solomid.net or, like, TSM stands for that if you came in after they just changed it to the acronym, right? So, in a way, even their branding, the Knicks, is also sort of divorced from reality through the,
But now that Loco mentions it, the Knicks also have a problem where, famously, their owner is a little bit too hands-on and wants to have a lot of say and doesn't always delegate properly to the coaching staff. Doesn't sound like anyone I know, right?
All right.
Man alive.
I actually thought it was a really good analogy. Anyway, we're going to take one last call today, guys, because it's been going long. It's from Lady Nico. Hello, Lady Nico. May we please have your question?
Yeah, sure. So my question is...
Uh-oh.
I think it lagged a second. Can you say it again? Start from the beginning again, please.
Based on who you think is likely to be the top two in Group C and D, which quarters matchups do you think would be the most interesting or competitive? And from that, which semi-finals do you think we're going to get?
Got it. Thank you.
Right? From the beautiful islands of Great Britain there. No, she's basically said based on the 1 and 2, it's like who would be the most interesting quarterfinals matchups, right?
Yes. So considering that I think we agreed it's SKT Royal, we said 1 and 2, and then we were sort of divided on Group D.
And we can talk about any from Group D.
I'll tell you one right now, Loco, and obviously it doesn't have the same hype, unfortunately, but just in the context of MSI, I mean, a world in which you could potentially have IG against G2 is a pretty fun one for a best of 5.
Or
it's
Griffin.
Not as cool because it doesn't have Ning, but I still think that would be a pretty fun one to run because we never got it at MSI. Everyone wanted to see that match, right?
G2 TL again, I actually think would also be incredibly fun.
Sure. I also think in this world, like TL's going to have a way better chance to stand up than they did at MSI. That was the worst. That's one of the reasons I personally am surprised so many people dismissed the TL MSI result because to me, you had your best result in going against the meta. Like you weren't supposed to have any shot at that.
I think I'd be really interested to see TL FunPlus Phoenix. Not because I think it's going to be the best quarterfinal, but because I think it might be very competitive. And I am particularly interested to see how well Xmithie can like hold up to Tion and some of how they would react to some of the more roaming plays that we see from FunPlus Phoenix.
Here's an obvious one. Again, like to be fair, this one's less likely because I think this team will win their group. But if somehow Griffin and SKT played, there's a lot of baggage there for Griffin. Like you can go out the world around it, or you can.
That's a great story. That's
or you
true.
can do what Astralis and CS:GO just did to Team Liquid. It's like, yeah, you beat us in all the ones that were less important, but we got the one that matters. Like at that point in time, no one's going to care that SKT won the splits if Griffin beats them now and then goes on to win the worlds.
If you ask SKT what's one team they want to beat more than anyone, I actually don't think it'd be Griffin. It'd be G2. And I think that matchup's very likely and very possible. I think SKT is 3-0 in their group, so likely to place first. And then if they match up versus G2, who's second seed, then you have that matchup right there.
Sure.
Another interesting one might be Royal versus Damwon, given the fact that we think that
inverted sides of the map.
Inverted sides of the map.
Exactly.
So it would be kind of like a battle between whose side of the map is stronger. That might be really cool too.
I always tell people this by default, just from my own history following competitive games. You usually want that. You want like mismatches across the field so that you get a strength versus a weakness versus so you can have an interesting match. Like whereas it might sound fun in theory to have two people with the same style, but that's often just the one that's slightly better, just slightly destroying the other guy in every area of the game and making a not very good match actually.
The other thing about Royal versus Damwon is last year, Royal faced a team in G2 that were actually incredibly weak from bot side, but G2 was able to win off of their solo laners doing well. Did Royal learn a lesson in terms of maybe we can't play too heavily to Uzi and we need to kind of balance out on rest of the map, or do they make the same mistake and play heavily to Uzi and lose again?
Yeah, great questions. Should be fun to see the quarterfinal. So we got to wrap this one up. Remember, please follow the Cloud9 Twitch channel. We will be back on Tuesday, and we'll be doing the next 3 Tuesdays before quarters, semis, and finals to wrap up this limited run of Summoning Insight on the 9s presented by AT&T. Otherwise, you guys can look forward to Aframu, who's going to be joining us from 100 Thieves coming up on Tuesday. And thank you very much for watching. You can see how you can follow Cloud9 right over here. Oh, they moved the camera. Unfortunate. All right, we'll see you guys on Tuesday, same time, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Central European. Goodbye.
Don't sleep on Splyce.